The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing contracts at my Boston law office. My mother's voice carried that familiar tone of authority that still made my stomach clench at 32 years old. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "Rachel, we need to talk about your grandmother's house. Sarah's pregnant and needs a place of her own. We're selling the Vermont property to buy her an apartment." My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. The country house she spoke of so casually had been my sanctuary for 5 years, since Grandma Eleanor passed. Every weekend I escaped there from the chaos of corporate law. "What do you mean you're selling it?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "The decision's made. Your sister needs help now." The line went dead. I stared at the property deed in my desk drawer, my hands trembling as I pulled it out. They had no right. But I knew my parents. They'd find a way. In that moment, staring at my grandmother's signature, I made a decision that would shatter every expectation my family had. They wanted to take my inheritance. They had no idea what I was capable of. The drive from Boston to my parents' Connecticut home usually took 2 hours. I made it in 90 minutes, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. My mind raced through 5 years of memories at the Vermont house. Grandmother Eleanor's garden, where she taught me about patience and growth. The library, where we spent entire afternoons reading together. The kitchen, where she shared stories of her own struggles with my parents' greed. I found them in the dining room papers spread across the mahogany table like battle plans. My father, Thomas, looked up with that practiced smile that never reached his eyes. He'd perfected it during his years as a financial advisor, the same smile he wore when convincing clients to make investments that benefited him more than them. "Rachel, good. We were just finalizing details with the realtor." He pushed a stack of documents toward me. "Johnson Properties offered $800,000. Quick cash deal." "The house is worth at least $1.2 million. My voice cut through the room's false warmth. Sarah sat in the corner, one hand resting on her supposedly pregnant belly. Her husband, Mark, didn't even look up from his phone, his fingers swiping through apartment listings in Manhattan's most expensive neighborhoods. My sister had gained weight, but something about her pose seemed rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. "The market's tough right now." My mother, Patricia, interjected her pearl necklace, catching the light as she leaned forward. "Besides, your sister needs stability for the baby. You have your career. You don't need that old house." I picked up the papers, my legal training immediately catching discrepancies. "These documents are dated 3 weeks ago. You've been planning this behind my back." My father's smile faltered for a second. "We're your parents. We know what's best for the family." "The house is in my name. Grandmother left it to me specifically." "About that." Thomas pulled out another folder. "There's a provision in the will. Since you were under 27 when Eleanor passed, we maintain custodial oversight of the property until you demonstrate financial maturity." My blood ran cold. I'm 32. I've been financially independent since law school. The clause states we determine when you've reached appropriate maturity. His smile returned sharper this time. I flipped through the pages, my heart sinking with each paragraph of legal manipulation. They'd found a loophole, probably with the help of their lawyer friend who'd always given me unsettling looks at family gatherings. "This won't hold up in court," I said, though we all knew court proceedings could take years. Sarah finally spoke, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Rachel, why are you being so selfish? My baby needs a proper home. That dusty old house just sits empty while you waste money on Boston rent." "I go there every weekend." "To do what? Pretend you're some country girl, you're a city lawyer. Act like it." Mark looked up from his phone for the first time. "The Riverside Towers has a penthouse available. $3.5 million, but with the house sale and some creative financing." "Creative financing." I stared at him. "You mean expecting more money than the house is worth?" My mother stood her chair, scraping against the hardwood floor. "Enough. We've already accepted Johnson's offer. You can sign willingly or we'll proceed without you. You can't sell property you don't own." My father's expression darkened. "Check page 12. With shaking hands, I turned to the page. There at the bottom was my signature. Except I'd never signed this document. The forgery was good, but not perfect. The way the R in Rachel curved was wrong. The pressure points were inconsistent. They'd practiced my signature, but couldn't replicate the natural flow from years of signing legal documents. "You forged my signature." The words came out as a whisper. "Prove it," Thomas said simply. "Johnson's nephew works at the county clerk's office. These papers will be filed Monday morning, unless you sign the real documents now saving us all this unpleasantness." I looked around the room at my family. My mother examined her manicure. My father organized papers with mechanical precision. Sarah rubbed her belly in slow circles while Mark calculated renovation costs on his phone. Not one of them would meet my eyes. "I need time to think," I managed. "You have until Sunday night," my mother said. "Be reasonable, Rachel. Family helps family." I gathered my purse, my legs unsteady. As I reached the door, my father called out, "Oh, and Rachel, don't do anything foolish. The Johnson family has connections everywhere. Real estate banking, legal circles. You wouldn't want your career affected by a family dispute." The threat hung in the air as I left. In the driveway, I sat in my car, hands shaking, as I called the one person I trusted completely. Jennifer picked up on the second ring. "Jen, remember when you said if I ever needed help with my family to call immediately?" "What did they do now?" "They're trying to steal my house. Can you meet me tonight?" "I'll clear my schedule. Rachel, whatever they're planning, we'll stop them." As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror at my parents' house. The same brick colonial where I'd grown up feeling like an outsider, where my achievements were never enough, where my sister's failures were always excused, where my grandmother's visits were the only bright spots until she took me away every summer to Vermont. They thought they'd won with their forged documents and legal threats. They had no idea I'd spent 5 years in corporate law learning how to fight battles they couldn't imagine. The girl they'd pushed around was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned from the best lawyers in Boston how to protect what was hers. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Stop being dramatic. Sign the papers. It's just a house." Just a house. She had no idea what that house represented. The only place where I'd felt truly loved. The only inheritance my grandmother could protect from my parents' grasping hands. The only thing in my life they hadn't managed to taint with their manipulations. I pulled over at a rest stop and made 3 calls. First to my bank to check that my accounts remained secure. Second to a private investigator I'd used for a case last year. Third to the Vermont Property Tax Office confirming I was still the sole owner on record. "Is there any way to expedite a sale?" I asked the clerk. "If you have a cash buyer and clean title, could be done in 72 hours. 72 hours. I had to move fast. My parents thought they held all the cards, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd taught me through years of disappointment and betrayal never to trust them. And now, finally, that lesson would serve me well. As I merged back onto the highway, my phone rang. Jennifer again. "I just looked at the documents you sent. Rachel, this is bigger than just forgery. There are irregularities in their claimed provision. I think they've been planning this much longer than 3 weeks." "How long?" "Based on the paper trail. Since before your grandmother died. We need to meet tonight. And Rachel, don't go to your apartment. If they're willing to forge documents, they might be watching you." The sun was setting as I drove toward Boston, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere in Vermont, my grandmother's house stood empty waiting. But not for long. If my family wanted to play dirty, they were about to learn I'd inherited more than just property from Eleanor Hamilton. I'd inherited her steel spine and her understanding that sometimes the only way to deal with toxic people was to cut them off completely. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. "Your father's friend at Channel 5 owes us a favor. Would hate for your firm to see their golden girl portrayed as a selfish daughter on the evening news." I deleted the message and blocked her number. The war had begun and I intended to win. Not just for me, but for my grandmother who'd seen this coming and tried her best to protect me. Her house wouldn't fall into their hands. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, I would make sure of that. Jennifer's corner office on the 40th floor of the Prudential Tower offered a view of Boston that usually calmed my nerves. Tonight, the city lights below seemed to pulse with the same urgency I felt. She'd ordered Chinese takeout, but the containers sat untouched as we spread documents across her conference table. "Your parents are amateurs," Jennifer said, adjusting her reading glasses. "Good enough to fool someone who doesn't know law, but this provision they're claiming it's tissue paper." She highlighted a section of my grandmother's will. "See this language, sole and exclusive ownership. No conditions, no oversight provisions. They inserted a fake addendum. Can we prove it?" "We don't have to. We just need to move faster than them." Jennifer pulled out her laptop. "I have a client who specializes in quick real estate acquisitions. Discrete cash purchases, no questions asked. He's been looking for properties in Vermont." "Why the secrecy?" She hesitated. "His identity needs to remain confidential until closing. He's particular about privacy. But Rachel, he'll pay market value in cash close in 48 hours and handle everything through my office. No paper trail leading back to you until it's done." My stomach churned. "Something illegal?" "Nothing like that. Let's say he has reasons to keep his investments private. Bitter divorce, asset protection, that sort of thing. Are you willing to meet his terms?" I thought of my forged signature, my parents' smug certainty, Sarah's practiced belly rubbing. "What does he need from me?" Total silence. "You tell no one about the sale until it's complete. No hints to your family. Can you spend the next 2 days acting like you're considering their demands while we handle everything behind the scenes? The house needs some work. Grandmother kept it maintained, but he's already had it evaluated. He's prepared to pay $1.3 million as is." I nearly dropped my tea. That's above market value. He values privacy more than money, and he wants a quick, clean transaction. Yes or no, Rachel. Once we start, there's no backing out. I closed my eyes, seeing my grandmother's face. She'd sat me down the month before she died, her hands still steady despite the cancer. "They'll come for the house after I'm gone," she'd said. "Your parents know I've left them nothing. They'll try to take yours instead. Be smarter than them, my dear. Be stronger." "Yes," I said. "What do I need to do?" Jennifer smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. "Go home. Act normal. If your parents contact you, sound conflicted but moving toward agreement. Meanwhile, I'll prepare everything. Can you get to the house tomorrow without them knowing? I told my office I'd be working remotely this week. They think I'm in Boston." "Perfect. Here's what you'll need to retrieve from the property." She handed me a list. Documents, valuables, personal items. Anything I couldn't bear to lose because once the sale completed, I might not have access again for a while. "Jen, why does this feel like I'm planning a heist?" "Because in a way you are. You're stealing your own life back from people who think they own you." We worked until midnight planning every detail. Jennifer's assistant Miguel arrived with coffee and quietly began preparing documents. I signed powers of attorney sale agreements and disclosure forms until my hand cramped. "One more thing," Jennifer said as I prepared to leave. "The buyer's representative will contact you tomorrow. Margaret something. Former FBI now handles sensitive transactions. Don't be alarmed by her questions. She's thorough." Former FBI, Asset Recovery Division. She's legitimate, just intense. Answer honestly, but volunteer nothing extra. I took a lift to a hotel Jennifer had booked under her company's name. No credit card trail leading to me. As I lay in the sterile bed, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. 32 years old, and I was hiding from my family like a fugitive. The next morning, I drove to Vermont in a rental car, taking back roads I'd learned as a teenager. The house stood exactly as I'd left it. Sunday afternoon before my world tilted sideways. 3 stories of white clapboard and green shutters, my grandmother's roses climbing the east wall despite the October chill. Inside, everything whispered memories. The grandfather clock in the foyer still keeping perfect time. The kitchen where grandmother taught me to can preserves. The library with its floor-to-ceiling shelves, each book a carefully chosen treasure. I worked methodically, filling boxes with photo albums, grandmother's jewelry, her handwritten recipes. In her study behind a false panel she'd shown me years ago, I found more than expected. Bundles of letters dated 20 years back, legal documents, bank statements. My hands trembled as I read. My parents had been siphoning money from my grandmother for decades. Fake investment opportunities, manufactured emergencies, sob stories about Sarah's needs. And through it all, my grandmother had known. She'd kept evidence. One letter made me sit down hard on the dusty floor. Dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, then you've found my insurance policy. Your parents believe me a foolish old woman, but I've watched them consume everything good in their path. I couldn't save myself from their manipulations, but I could save you. The house is yours legally and morally. Whatever they claim, whatever lies they tell, remember wolves dress in sheep's clothing, but they're still wolves. The evidence here should help if needed. Be brave, my dear one. Be free. I photographed every document before carefully packing them. 2 hours into my work, my phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Hamilton, this is Margaret Chen Winters. The voice was crisp, professional. I represent the interested buyer. I understand you're at the property now. Yes. Excellent. I'll need to inspect the premises before we proceed. Are you available in 30 minutes? That's fine. Ms. Hamilton, I need to verify. Are you acting of your own free will? No coercion, no undue influence. I'm choosing to sell my property to protect it from theft. A pause. That's unusually candid. My friend Jennifer said to be honest. Then we'll work well together. 30 minutes. She arrived in exactly 29 minutes driving a black sedan that somehow managed to look both ordinary and official. Margaret Chen Winters stood barely 5 feet tall, but her presence filled the doorway. Steel gray hair pulled back, severely dark suit, impeccable eyes that missed nothing. May I? She gestured inside. Please. She moved through the house with systematic precision, photographing, measuring, taking notes on a tablet. I followed silently until she stopped in the study. Your grandmother was Eleanor Hamilton, the education advocate. You knew her. By reputation, she funded scholarships for disadvantaged youth. My nephew received one. Her expression softened fractionally. This explains my client's interest. I don't understand. You will when appropriate. She returned to her inspection, pausing at family photos. Your parents? Yes. And they're unaware of this transaction. They're trying to force me to sell to their buyer below market value. They forged my signature. Margaret's eyes sharpened. You have proof. I showed her the photos I'd taken of the forged documents. She studied them with professional interest. Sloppy work. Your parents aren't as clever as they think. She made notes. My client values justice. This information adjusts our timeline. Can you maintain pretense for 40 more hours? I think so. No thinking. Yes or no? Yes. Good. Pack anything irreplaceable. After tomorrow, access may be complicated. Is your client going to destroy the house? The thought made me sick. Quite the opposite. But your family will react poorly to losing control. Best to secure what matters now. We completed the walkthrough in silence. At the door, Margaret turned. Your grandmother would be proud. Selling to preserve rather than surrender. The distinction matters. After she left, I finished packing. 6 boxes of memories loaded into the rental car. On my final walk through the house, I touched each room like a goodbye. The breakfast nook where grandmother made pancakes every Saturday. The window seat where I'd hidden with books during family gatherings. The garden vista where she'd taught me that beautiful things required patience and care. My phone buzzed. Sarah. Mom says you haven't answered about signing. Stop being selfish. My morning sickness is terrible. I typed back, thinking it over. Need until Sunday. Her response was immediate. Don't screw this up for me, Rachel. I deleted the conversation and blocked her number too. Tomorrow the papers would be signed. In 48 hours, my family's scheme would crumble. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, I felt only sadness for the family we could have been if greed hadn't poisoned every interaction. That night back in the hotel, Jennifer called. Margaret was impressed. The buyer wants to proceed immediately. Can you be at my office tomorrow at 10? Did she mention anything about the buyer's plans? Only that justice has patient architects, whatever that means. I knew what it meant. Someone else had been wronged by my parents, someone with resources and patience. The house would be their instrument of revelation. I should have felt guilty using my inheritance as a weapon, but all I felt was relief. 10 o'clock, I confirmed. Rachel, after tomorrow, everything changes. Are you ready? I looked at the boxes stacked in my room, a lifetime of real memories salvaged from a house built on love, not lies. I've been ready for years. I just didn't know it. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you take your life back. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I read my grandmother's letters, each one revealing another layer of my parents' deceptions. By dawn, I understood the full scope of their betrayals. The house wasn't their first target, just their boldest. They'd been circling like vultures long before grandmother died. Well, tomorrow the vultures would discover their prey had vanished, and in its place something they never expected: consequences. The morning sun cast long shadows through the Vermont house as I made my final inspection. I'd arrived early, wanting one last moment alone before everything changed. The breakfast table still held my grandmother's china, each piece a memory of quiet mornings together. I was photographing the dining room when I heard it, a faint creak from upstairs. My body tensed. The house was supposed to be empty. I climbed the stairs slowly, avoiding the squeaky third step from habit. The sound came again from grandmother's study. Heart pounding, I pushed open the door to find chaos. Drawers pulled out, papers scattered, and the false panel I'd discovered yesterday hanging open. But that wasn't what made my blood freeze. On the desk lay fresh documents placed deliberately where I'd find them, letters in my grandmother's handwriting I'd never seen before. I picked up the top one with trembling hands. My dear friend Dorothy, I fear this may be my last correspondence. Patricia and Thomas have intensified their pressure. They believe I don't know about the forged checks the diverted donations meant for your scholarship fund. $23,000 stolen, and they smile at Sunday dinner as if their hands are clean. Dorothy, why did that name sound familiar? The next letter provided the answer. The business partnership you trusted them with has been perverted into their personal piggy bank. They've hidden the theft well, but I've kept records. One day the truth will surface. I pray you'll forgive an old woman's cowardice in not speaking sooner. My daughter's greed breaks my heart, but I cannot let it break others. I sank into grandmother's chair, the weight of discovery crushing. My parents hadn't just stolen from family. They'd destroyed a business partnership, embezzled charitable funds, built their comfortable life on the ruins of trust. A photograph slipped from between pages. My parents, young and smiling, standing with an elegant Asian woman at what appeared to be a business launch. Hamilton Chen Innovations read the banner behind them. Dorothy Chen. She'd been their partner. My phone buzzed. Jennifer, change of plans. Can you meet at the property? Instead, buyer wants final walkthrough. Something felt wrong. Jennifer was meticulous about security, and she'd insisted yesterday on meeting at her office. I started to type a response when another sound came from downstairs. The front door. Footsteps. I grabbed the letters and crept to the landing. Through the banister, I could see two figures in the foyer. Sarah and Mark, but something was different. Sarah moved with quick efficiency, no hand on her supposedly pregnant belly. She pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. "The coast is clear," she said. "Rachel's car isn't here. We can load up the valuable stuff before anyone notices." Mark wheeled in a dolly. "You sure about this? Breaking and entering is serious." "It's not breaking in when you have a key." Sarah dangled a key ring. "Besides, once Mom and Dad file those papers Monday, this place is technically ours anyway. We're just getting a head start." "What about your pregnancy symptoms?" Sarah laughed, the sound sharp and ugly. "Please, Like I'd actually get pregnant before securing the money. The belly padding works perfectly. Even had Rachel's bleeding heart going. I pressed record on my phone, angling it between the banister posts. The pregnancy test you showed your parents. Photoshop and tears. Mom wanted to believe it so badly she didn't look closely. Dad doesn't care as long as he gets his cut. The plan was always to fake a miscarriage after we got the house money. Tragic loss, no questions asked. They moved toward the living room. I heard ceramic breaking. Careful, Sarah snapped. The grandmother's Limoges is worth 12 grand. I already have a buyer lined up. Like the jewelry you took last month. That was just the test run. Made sure the spare key still worked, checked for security systems. The old bat never modernized anything. These paintings alone will cover our debts to Rico. Rico. My successful sister, with her marketing firm, owed money to someone named Rico. Mark's voice carried clearly. Still think we should have waited for the legal stuff to finish. And risk Rachel actually fighting back. No, we take what we can now. Mom promised me 40% of the house sale, but why settle for that when we can have it all? The parents are too stupid to realize we're playing them too. Your family is something else. They're not family, they're stepping stones. Once we clean out this place and get the apartment money, we're gone. Let them figure out their legal mess while we're living in Costa Rica. I'd heard enough. Quietly, I retreated to the study, gathering the most damning documents. My hands shook as I found the hidden panel grandmother had shown me held more than letters. A small security device blinked steadily. She'd installed a camera system, after all, just hidden, where only I would know to look. The monitor showed multiple angles. Sarah and Mark systematically loading antiques into boxes. But more importantly, it showed their visit from last month. Clear footage of them breaking in using the spare key to ransack rooms, Sarah pulling off a foam pregnancy belly to fit through tight spaces. I copied the files to my phone, my lawyer's mind already building the case. Breaking and entering grand theft fraud conspiracy. My sister had handed me everything I needed. A door slammed downstairs. New voices, my parents. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" My mother's shrill tone echoed. "Getting what's mine." Sarah's voice had turned cold. "You promised me this house money, but you're too slow, taking matters into my own hands." "You can't just steal things." My father sounded genuinely shocked. "Like you stole from Dorothy Chen. Oh yes, I know all about your dirty little secrets. 20 years of fraud and you thought you were so clever. I learned from the best daddy." I crept back to the landing, still recording. My mother stood in the foyer, her face flushed with anger. "Everything we did was for this family, for you and Rachel. For us." Sarah laughed. "You stole Dorothy's innovations, destroyed her business, used her money to buy your perfect Connecticut life, and now you're stealing from Rachel to give to me. Well, guess what? I'm cutting out the middleman. Mark and I are taking what we want and leaving. Good luck explaining to Rachel why her house is empty." "You ungrateful brat!" Thomas stepped toward Sarah, but Mark blocked him. "Touch her and I'll call the cops. Wonder what they'd think about those forged signatures you're planning to file Monday." Patricia gasped. "You wouldn't dare expose family business." "Family?" Sarah's voice dripped contempt. "You taught me family is just people you can manipulate without consequences. Well, surprise. I'm graduating from your school of dysfunction." "We'll cut you off," Thomas threatened. "Not another penny. With what money I've seen your finances. You're leveraged to the hilt. Without this house sale, you'll lose everything within 6 months. The Connecticut house is double mortgaged. Your retirement accounts are empty. You need this sale more than I do." The silence that followed was deafening. Then my mother's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. "How do you know that?" "Because unlike you, I actually am smart. I've been watching, learning, preparing. Did you really think I'd follow your path? Scrambling for scraps, always one step ahead of bankruptcy? No, I'm taking what I need and disappearing." "Sarah, please." Patricia's voice broke. "We're your parents." "You're criminals who happen to have children. There's a difference." I heard boxes being loaded, furniture scraping, my family destroying each other in real time while I held evidence that could destroy them all. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd come to steal from me and ended up exposing themselves. My phone vibrated. The real Jennifer. "Where are you? You missed our 10 o'clock. I typed quickly, "At the house. Family showed up. Call police." Her response was immediate. "Stay hidden. On our way." But I couldn't stay hidden, not when I heard what came next. "Is that gasoline?" Mark's voice carried alarm. "Insurance policy," Sarah said casually. "Accidental fire during renovation. We get the insurance money plus everything we're taking now. 2 birds, 1 match." "You're insane," Thomas breathed. "I'm practical. You taught me that too. Never leave money on the table." I couldn't let them burn my grandmother's house. I stepped onto the landing phone held high. "I've recorded everything," I called down. "The police are on their way." 4 faces turned up to me in shock. Sarah recovered first, her face twisting into something ugly. "Little perfect Rachel, always grandmother's favorite. You think you're better than us." "I think I'm not a criminal." I kept recording. "The pregnancy, the theft, the planned arson. It's all here." Mark bolted for the door boxes, forgotten. Sarah screamed after him, her carefully constructed image shattering. My parents stood frozen, their scheme crumbling around them. "You recorded your family." Patricia's voice was hollow. "I recorded criminals planning to burn down my house." "Your house?" Thomas laughed bitterly. "For a few more days, maybe. Come Monday." "Monday, you'll be in custody for forgery and fraud. Your friend at the county clerk's office, too, I imagine." Sirens wailed in the distance. Sarah looked between the door and the gasoline can, calculating. Then she ran, abandoning everything, including her parents. "Sarah," Patricia called after her, "don't leave us." But she was gone, the door hanging open like an accusation. My parents looked up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw them clearly. Not the authority figures who'd controlled my childhood, not the disappointed parents who'd found me lacking, just 2 aging criminals whose schemes had finally caught up to them. "Rachel," my father tried his salesman voice, "we can work this out. Family doesn't involve police." "You're right," I said, starting down the stairs as sirens grew louder. "Family doesn't forge signatures or steal inheritances or plan arson, which means we're not family. We're just people who share DNA." The police arrived as I reached the foyer. Through the door, I saw Margaret's black sedan pulling up behind them. The buyer's representative had perfect timing. As officers entered, I handed them my phone, the evidence clear and damning. My parents didn't resist as they were led away. They seemed smaller somehow, their power revealed as nothing more than manipulation and lies. The house stood intact around us, grandmother's legacy preserved through truth rather than deception. Margaret approached as the last police car left. "Your buyer still interested?" I asked. She smiled, an expression that transformed her stern face. "More than ever. Justice, as I said, has patient architects. Shall we discuss the expedited closing?" As we walked back into the house, I thought about Dorothy Chen, whoever she was, about the scholarship funds stolen, the business destroyed, the trust betrayed. My parents had built their life on others' ruins, but ruins could be foundations for something better. The house would pass to new hands tomorrow, but today it had served its final purpose for me. It had revealed the truth, protected itself, and shown me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing who deserves your trust. And my trust, I realized, belonged with the grandmother who'd loved me enough to see this coming, who'd left me not just property, but the tools to finally break free. The police station coffee tasted like burnt rubber, but I drank it anyway, needing something to ground me as I gave my statement. Officer Martinez typed steadily as I detailed the attempted theft, the admission of fraud, the planned arson. Through the window, I could see my parents in separate interview rooms, their earlier bravado replaced by the gray pallor of reality. "The security footage from the house backs up everything," Martinez said. "Your sister won't get far. We've issued a BOLO for her and Mark Thompson." "What about Monday's filing?" I asked. The forged documents. We'll be having a conversation with the county clerk's office. This goes deeper than family drama, Ms. Hamilton. Forged legal documents, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted grand theft. Your parents are looking at serious charges. My phone buzzed. Jennifer, emergency. Your mother's out on bail and heading to your apartment. Building security just called. I shot to my feet. I need to go. Ms. Hamilton, you should let us handle... But I was already running. My apartment held copies of crucial documents, evidence I hadn't yet secured. If Patricia got in there first, she might destroy proof of older crimes. I drove like a woman possessed, calling building security. Don't let anyone into my unit. I don't care what they claim. She says she's your mother having a medical emergency, the guard replied. She looks pretty upset. She's a criminal out on bail. Call the police if she doesn't leave. 20 minutes through Boston traffic felt like hours. I screeched into my building's garage to find chaos. 2 police cars, an ambulance, and a crowd of neighbors filling the lobby. My stomach dropped. What happened? I pushed through to the security desk. Your mother? The guard looked shaken. She collapsed when we wouldn't let her up. Kept saying she needed her medication from your apartment. Classic Patricia. When manipulation failed, she turned to medical drama. I'd seen her pull this at family events whenever she didn't get her way. Mysterious fainting spells that required immediate attention and derailed any confrontation. Where is she now? Paramedics are checking her out. She's refusing transport. I found her on a lobby bench, clutching her chest theatrically, while a tired-looking EMT took her blood pressure. She spotted me and immediately increased her performance. Rachel, thank God, I need my heart medication. It's in your bathroom cabinet. You've never been in my bathroom, Mother. The EMT looked between us. Ma'am, your vitals are normal. Slightly elevated blood pressure, but... She's faking, I said flatly. She's trying to get into my apartment to destroy evidence of her crimes. Patricia's face went from pitiful to venomous in seconds. How dare you? I'm your mother! You're out on bail for fraud. Why are you here? She stood miraculously recovered. To talk sense into you before you destroy our family. You destroyed our family 20 years ago when you stole from Dorothy Chen. The name hit her like a physical blow. She actually staggered, and this time it wasn't performance. How do you... Grandmother kept records. Everything you and Dad stole, every lie you told, every person you destroyed building your perfect life. You don't understand. Her voice dropped to a whisper. We did what we had to do. Dorothy was going to cut us out of the business. We invested everything. So you destroyed her instead. She was too soft, too worried about ethics and fairness. Business requires tough choices. Like stealing from charity funds. The lobby had gone silent, everyone listening. Patricia seemed to realize she was confessing in public and clamped her mouth shut. Leave, I said. Don't come to my home, my office, or the Vermont house. Your bail conditions will soon include staying away from me anyway. Rachel, please, Sarah's gone. She took everything and disappeared. We have nothing left. You have each other. That's more than your victims had. Security escorted her out. I spent the next hour in my apartment securing documents, backing up files, making sure nothing could be destroyed if they found another way in. The theft attempt at the house had accelerated everything. Tomorrow's closing couldn't come fast enough. Jennifer called as I finished. You okay? Define okay. Fair point. Listen, there's been a development. The buyer wants to close tonight. Can you meet at my office at 8? Tonight, is that even legal? Legal and bulletproof. Margaret's already coordinating with the registry. Your family's implosion has created urgency. Jen, who is this buyer? Someone who's waited a long time for justice. That's all I can say until closing. I agreed to the meeting and spent the afternoon fielding calls. My boss understanding about the family emergency, but concerned about publicity. Cousins emerging from the woodwork to choose sides. Sarah's abandoned husband, Mark, begging me not to press charges, swearing he was a victim too. She manipulated me. he whined over the phone. "The pregnancy, the plan, everything. I thought we were just taking some old furniture." "You helped load stolen goods. You knew about the gasoline." "I tried to stop her." "Tell it to the police, Mark." As evening approached, I sat in my apartment watching the sunset over the Charles River. By tomorrow, the house would belong to someone else. My last tangible connection to grandmother would be legally severed. But maybe that was fitting. Her true legacy wasn't property. It was the strength to stand up to the people who'd hurt us both. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Rachel." Sarah's voice was different, cold, controlled. "Having fun destroying the family? Where are you?" "Somewhere you'll never find me. But I wanted you to know something. You think you've won, you've lost everything. Mom and Dad will never forgive you. The family will always remember you as the traitor who chose money over blood." "I chose truth over crime." "Same thing in our family." She laughed bitterly. "You were always the righteous one. Grandmother's perfect angel who could do no wrong. Did you know she left me nothing, not a single penny or memory? Everything to you." "You stole from her while she was dying, Sarah. She knew." A pause. "I needed money. My business was failing. She had so much. And instead of asking for help, you took, just like Mom and Dad taught you." "Don't you dare judge me. You with your perfect job and your inherited house and your moral superiority. You don't know what it's like to fail, to need to scramble. I know what it's like to be betrayed by family, to watch them smile while planning to rob me, to discover my pregnant sister is a lie and my parents are criminals." "We're all criminals, Rachel. You just hide it better. Selling the house behind their backs? That's not exactly noble. It's my house, my choice, and unlike you, I'm not running from the consequences." "No, you're just destroying everyone else with them." Her voice cracked. "I'm pregnant, Rachel. For real this time. Found out yesterday. Ironic, right? Fake it until you make it, and now I'm actually carrying a child I'll have to raise alone on the run because my sister chose revenge over family." I couldn't tell if this was another manipulation. With Sarah, truth and lies blended until even she couldn't distinguish them. "Turn yourself in," I said. "Face what you've done. Maybe they'll be lenient." "Like you were." She laughed again, harsh and broken. "Goodbye, Rachel. Enjoy your empty victory. When you're old and alone, remember you chose this." The line went dead. I sat holding the phone, her words echoing. Was she right? Had I chosen revenge over family? No, I'd chosen justice over enabling, truth over comfortable lies. If that meant being alone, so be it. Better alone than surrounded by people who saw me as nothing more than an ATM with emotional buttons to push. 7:30 came quickly. I dressed carefully, choosing the suit I wore for major court appearances. This felt like a trial's end, the moment when verdicts are read and lives change course. Jennifer's office building was mostly empty, the cleaning crew the only signs of life. But the 40th floor blazed with light. Jennifer met me at the elevator, excitement barely contained. "Ready for this?" I still don't know what this is. History correcting itself. Come on. The conference room was set up for a major closing. Documents lined the table. A notary waited in the corner. Margaret stood by the window, and beside her, a woman I didn't recognize. Elegant, composed with silver, streaking her black hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything. "Rachel," Margaret said formally, "may I present Dorothy Chen, CEO of Chen Technologies and your buyer." The woman from the photograph, my parents' former partner, the one they'd destroyed. She stepped forward, extending her hand. "Ms. Hamilton, I've waited 20 years for this moment." Her grip was firm, her gaze direct. This was the woman my parents had underestimated, the one they'd stolen from, thinking she'd simply disappear. They'd been catastrophically wrong. "You're buying my house to get back at them?" "I'm buying your house because it's a sound investment. The fact that it serves justice is merely a bonus." She smiled, and I saw steel beneath silk. "Shall we complete our transaction?" As we sat to sign papers, I understood. The house wasn't just changing hands, it was becoming an instrument of balance, a way to restore what had been stolen. Dorothy Chen had survived my parents' betrayal and thrived despite it. Now she would own the one thing they'd schemed to take. Before we conclude, Dorothy said, "I want you to know I'll care for the property. Your grandmother was kind to me when your parents were not. This honors her memory as much as it serves my purposes." "What are your purposes?" "Patience, Miss Hamilton. Some stories unfold in their own time." We signed. Money transferred. Deeds exchanged. In less than an hour, I no longer owned my grandmother's house. But for the first time in days, I could breathe freely. "What happens now?" I asked. Dorothy smiled again, that sharp expression that promised consequences. "Now your parents learn that the past always comes due, with interest." As I left the building, papers tucked safely in my briefcase, I felt the weight of family expectations lift from my shoulders. Tomorrow would bring new battles. The criminal cases, the family fractures, the rebuilding of a life without toxic bonds. But tonight, I'd done what grandmother would have wanted. I'd protected her legacy by letting it go, ensuring it would serve justice rather than greed. Sometimes winning meant knowing when to walk away. My phone had 37 missed calls. I deleted them all and drove home through empty streets, finally free. The next morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October, as if the universe had decided to mark the occasion with gentle sunshine. I dressed carefully in my navy courtroom suit, the one that made me feel invincible during tough cases. Today felt like the most important closing argument of my life, except I was signing away instead of fighting to keep. Jennifer had arranged for us to meet at Branson Hewitt & Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. Their offices occupied 3 floors of a historic building overlooking Post Office Square. Everything about the space whispered discretion and old money, from the Persian rugs to the oil paintings of stern-faced founders. "They handle sensitive transactions," Jennifer explained as we rode the elevator to the 18th floor. "Celebrities, politicians, people who need privacy. Dorothy insisted on the best." The conference room they'd prepared could have hosted international negotiations. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic city views, while a massive mahogany table held documents arranged with military precision. Margaret was already there reviewing papers with 2 associates. She'd traded yesterday's severe suit for something softer, but no less professional. "Ms. Hamilton," she greeted me. "Thank you for accommodating the schedule change. Recent events made expediency prudent." "My family." "Your parents have retained David Sternberg." I winced. Sternberg was known for taking impossible cases and somehow finding technicalities. He'd gotten a congressman off insider trading charges on a filing error. "They're planning to challenge the sale," Jennifer asked. "Among other things." Margaret pulled out a tablet. "They filed an emergency injunction this morning, claiming undue influence and mental incapacity." "Whose mental incapacity?" "Yours. They're alleging the stress of family conflict has made you unable to make rational decisions." I laughed, the sound bouncing off the conference room's walls. "They forge my signature, try to steal my property, and I'm the one who's mentally incompetent." "Desperation makes people creative," Margaret said dryly. "Fortunately, Judge Harrison threw it out immediately, but it shows they're not going quietly." A soft knock interrupted us. A young assistant entered, followed by Dorothy Chen. Today, she wore a cream-colored suit that made her look like corporate royalty. Behind her came 2 more people, an older man with kind eyes and a younger woman who looked enough like Dorothy to be her daughter. "My attorney, James Wu," Dorothy introduced them, "and my daughter, Catherine. She'll be managing the property renovation." Catherine shook my hand warmly. "I've seen photos. It's a beautiful house. We'll honor its history while creating something new." "What are you planning?" Dorothy and Catherine exchanged glances. "A retreat center," Dorothy said, "for women rebuilding after financial abuse. Your grandmother would have approved, I think." My throat tightened. She would have loved that. "Shall we begin?" James Wu spread documents across the table. We have quite a bit to cover. The next hour was a blur of signatures, notarizations, and wire transfers. $1,300,000 deposited into an escrow account Jennifer had established. More money than I'd ever seen at once. Freedom and loss combined in a string of numbers. Throughout it all, Dorothy watched me with those calculating eyes. Finally, as we neared the end, she spoke. "You're wondering why I'm really doing this?" The thought crossed my mind. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a photograph. Younger versions of themselves, my parents, Dorothy, and a man I didn't recognize, stood in front of a building with a grand opening banner. Hamilton Chen Innovations, founded in 2004. Your parents had the connections. I had the technology, and my late husband had the business acumen. We were going to revolutionize data security. What happened? Your parents happened. Her voice remained calm, but her knuckles whitened around the photo. They discovered I'd developed something valuable. Instead of celebrating our success, they saw opportunity. Forged my signature on patent transfers, emptied the company accounts, and sold my innovations to a competitor for millions. The letters grandmother saved. She tried to warn me, but I trusted your parents. By the time I realized the betrayal, they'd covered their tracks well. The legal battles took 4 years, and every penny I had. I lost my house, my company, my marriage. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. Don't be. It taught me valuable lessons. I rebuilt stronger and smarter. Chen Technologies is now worth 100 times what our partnership ever was. But some debts require more than money to settle. Margaret cleared her throat. Speaking of which, there's a detail we haven't discussed. The contents of the house. I frowned. What about them? Your parents seem to believe certain items belong to them. They've provided a list. She slid papers across to me. Apparently, they claim to have purchased various antiques and artwork for your grandmother. I scanned the list, anger building with each line. The Tiffany lamps grandmother inherited from her mother, the piano she'd played since childhood, even her personal jewelry. These are lies. Everything on this list was grandmother's before she even met my father. We assumed as much, Dorothy said, but they'll likely attempt to remove these items. Margaret has a solution. Margaret smiled an expression that transformed her stern features into something almost predatory. I've arranged for a moving company to pack and store everything of value immediately after closing. Professional inventory, photographic documentation, climate-controlled storage. Your parents won't find so much as a spoon when they arrive. You think they'll try to break in again? I think they're desperate people facing prison. They'll try anything. James Wu pushed another document forward. This grants you access to the storage facility. Everything will be preserved until the criminal cases are resolved. After that, you can decide what to do with the contents. I signed, grateful for their foresight. You've thought of everything. I've had 20 years to plan, Dorothy said simply. As we finalized the last documents, my phone buzzed continuously. I'd silenced it, but the screen showed a stream of messages. Patricia Thomas' cousins, aunts, even Sarah's husband Mark. The family network activating like antibodies against infection. You should know, Margaret said, watching me decline another call. Your parents visited 3 other law firms this morning, trying to find someone to take their case. Word travels fast in legal circles. Let me guess, no takers. David Sternberg was their 4th choice. Even ambulance chasers have standards. The closing concluded with a ceremonial handing over of keys. Dorothy accepted them with both hands, the gesture oddly formal. Your grandmother gave me advice once, she said quietly. When I was devastated by your parents' betrayal, she told me that justice is like water. It always finds its level no matter how long it takes. She said something similar to me, that truth has patience. Wise woman. Dorothy pocketed the keys. I hope you understand, Rachel. This isn't about your house, it's about balance. Your parents took my life's work and built their comfort on my ruins. Now I'm returning the favor. What are you planning to do? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Nothing they didn't do to me, I'll simply be more thorough. We shook hands all around the ritual of legitimate business properly concluded. As Jennifer and I prepared to leave, Catherine Chen approached. I meant what I said about honoring the house's history. Would you like to be involved in the retreat planning? Your insights could help shape something meaningful. I'd like that, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. In the elevator, Jennifer was unusually quiet. Finally, as we reached the lobby, she spoke. How does it feel? Like I just armed a nuclear weapon aimed at my parents. They armed it themselves 20 years ago. You just provided coordinates. Outside, Boston buzzed with typical Saturday energy. Tourists wandered through Post Office Square taking photos of the historic architecture. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a few floors above the machinery of revenge had clicked into motion. My phone rang again. This time I answered. Rachel, my Aunt Louise, my mother's sister. I just heard. Patricia's hysterical. She says you sold the house out from under them. I sold my house, yes. To that Chinese woman, they cheated. I bristled at the description. To Dorothy Chen, a successful businesswoman who made a fair offer. Oh, honey, Louise sighed. Do you know what you've done? Your mother just told me everything. About the forgery, the arrest Sarah running, the family's in chaos. The family's been in chaos for years, Louise. We just hid it better before. But to choose her over your own blood. I chose honesty over crime. If that makes me a traitor, I'll wear the label proudly. Your mother wants to meet. She says if you'll call off this sale, they'll forget everything. Start fresh. The sale is done. I'm holding the check. Silence. Then quietly, she's going to destroy them, isn't she, Dorothy? She's going to take everything. She's going to take what they took from her, with interest. That sounds like revenge. It sounds like consequences. Louise sighed again. I tried to warn Patricia years ago that their schemes would catch up, but she was my sister, so I stayed quiet. Maybe if I'd spoken up then. We all made choices, Louise. Now we live with them. After I hung up Jennifer and I walked to a nearby cafe, over coffee, she helped me process what had just happened. You know, there's no going back, she said gently. Whatever relationship you had with your family, it's over. It was over the moment they forged my signature. I just made it official. Dorothy's not going to stop at the house. You realize that. I thought of the steel in Dorothy's eyes, the patient accumulation of evidence, the careful planning. I know. And you're okay with that? My parents destroyed her life and used the profits to fund mine, my education, my comfortable childhood, even my career launch, all built on stolen money. I stared into my coffee. Maybe watching them lose everything is the only way to balance those scales. That's very Old Testament of you. Sometimes the old ways are best. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the format. A bank notification. The wire transfer had completed. $1.3 million sat in my account. Blood money, in a way. The price of choosing truth over family. But as I sat in that cafe watching normal people live their normal lives, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years clean. The weight of family secrets of complicity, through silence of pretending not to see the rot beneath our respectable surface. All of it lifted. Another text this time from Margaret. Movers on site. Your parents just arrived and are arguing with security. Local police en route. I showed Jennifer, who whistled low. They don't give up. They can't. Without the house sale, they're finished. Still feel clean. I considered the question. My parents were probably standing in the driveway right now watching strangers pack up what they considered theirs, facing the reality that their decades of deception had finally come due. Did I feel guilty? Yes, I said finally. I feel clean. And I did. Because for the first time in my life, I'd chosen truth over comfort justice, over family loyalty. The price was steep. I'd lost my parents, my sister, my extended family's approval. but I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I could stand up to them, that I could break the cycle. "Come on," Jennifer said, throwing money on the table. "Let's go celebrate your freedom." As we left, my phone rang once more. Dorothy Chen. "The house is secured," she said simply. "Your family's belongings have been removed from the property. What comes next may be difficult to watch." "I understand. Do your parents took everything from me? My work, my marriage, my faith in people? I rebuilt, but the scars remain. What I'm going to do to them, it won't be pretty." "They made their choices." "Yes, they did." A pause. "Your grandmother would be proud of you, Rachel. You broke the pattern." The call ended. I stood on the sidewalk, Jennifer beside me, and looked up at the clear October sky. Somewhere across the city, my childhood home was being transformed into an instrument of justice. My family was fracturing beyond repair, and I was free. The sale was closed, the consequences were beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal consultations, family drama, and the strange quiet that comes after making an irrevocable choice. I threw myself into work, taking on extra cases to avoid thinking about what was happening at the Vermont house. But Thursday night, as I reviewed depositions in my apartment, my phone erupted with calls. Sheriff Thompson from Woodstock. I'd known him since childhood. He used to stop by grandmother's house for her famous apple pie during his patrols. "Rachel, we have a situation at the Hamilton property. Your father's been arrested." My coffee mug slipped, splashing documents with dark stains. "What happened?" "Breaking and entering, attempted burglary, property damage, and resisting arrest. He had a moving truck and a crew. Claimed he owned the place, got violent when we explained otherwise. He's in county lockup." "Is everyone okay?" "Your father's got a bloody nose from struggling with my deputies. More ego damage than anything else. But Rachel, there's more. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. They had floor plans, inventory lists, even scheduled buyers for what they planned to take." I sank into my couch. Security footage shows multiple individuals. We're still sorting identities, but your brother-in-law, Mark Thompson, was definitely there. And Rachel. The new security system is extensive. We have everything. Audio, video, multiple angles. Your father had no idea he was being recorded the entire time. Dorothy's system. Like something out of a federal building. Motion sensors, night vision, immediate cloud backup. Your father spent 20 minutes trying to disable what he thought was the system. Turns out he was disconnecting the old doorbell. Despite everything, I almost smiled. My father, so convinced of his technological superiority, outsmarted by proper planning. "The new owner wants to press full charges," Thompson continued. "She's already sent her legal team. This is going to get complicated." "I'll drive up tonight." "That's not necessary, but Rachel, you might want to prepare yourself. The footage, it's not flattering. Your father said things. About you, about the family. Its evidence now might become public." After hanging up, I sat in the dark processing. My father, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike and cheated Dorothy Chen in the same year, who'd walked me down graduation stages while planning to steal my inheritance, now sitting in a cell he'd built with his own greed. The phone rang again, my mother hysterical. "Your father's been arrested. They're treating him like a common criminal." "He broke into someone else's property, Mom. That literally makes him a criminal." "It's our house. That woman stole it." "I sold it, legally, with full documentation." "Under duress, you were manipulated. We have proof." "What proof?" "Dr. Morrison agrees your recent behavior indicates severe emotional distress. He's willing to testify." I laughed harsh and bitter. "Dr. Morrison? Your golf buddy who lost his license for overprescribing pain medications. Good luck with that." "How can you be so cold? Your father's in jail." "Because he committed crimes. This is what consequences look like." "Consequences." Her voice rose to a shriek. "That Chinese woman is destroying us. She's already contacted your father's old clients telling lies about embezzlement." The truth about embezzlement, you mean? She's turned our friends against us. The country club revoked our membership. The Hartfords won't return our calls. She's poisoning everyone with her version of history. The documented version with evidence. Evidence she fabricated. Your father's a respected businessman who's currently in jail for burglary. A pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, calculating. Rachel, you can stop this. Call Dorothy. Tell her you made a mistake. We'll pay back whatever she thinks we owe. Not because we did anything wrong, but to end this nightmare. Pay her back with what money? Another pause. We'll figure it out. Sell some assets. Your father has investments. Had investments, past tense. You're broke, aren't you? That's ridiculous. We have plenty of... Mom, I saw the foreclosure notice when I was at your house. The second mortgage documents, the credit card statements. You're drowning. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then quietly, it's temporary. Once we sell your grandmother's house... It's not her house anymore. It's not yours. It never was. She promised. When we took care of her during the cancer, she promised... You mean when you isolated her from friends, controlled her medications, and tried to manipulate her will? How dare you? We loved her. You loved her money. There's a difference. She started crying, but they were the practiced tears I'd seen my whole life, the ones that appeared whenever accountability threatened. I need you to wire bail money, she said through the sobs. $50,000. I can't get it until morning when banks open. No. No, he's your father. He's a criminal who tried to rob me, twice. Family doesn't abandon family. Tell that to Dorothy Chen. She was Dad's business partner, practically family, until you destroyed her. That was business. This is different. You're right. This is personal, which makes it worse. I hung up and blocked her number. 5 minutes later, calls started from other relatives. I let them go to voicemail, each message a variation on the same theme. How could I betray family? How could I be so heartless? How could I choose that woman over blood? By midnight, I gave up on work and drove to Vermont. I needed to see what my father had done, what desperation looked like when caught on camera. The house looked different in the darkness. New floodlights illuminated every angle. Security company signs dotted the lawn. A patrol car sat in the driveway, deputy inside drinking coffee. Ms. Hamilton. Deputy Chen approached. No relation to Dorothy, just one of life's ironies. Sheriff said you might come by. The owner left instructions. You're welcome to view the footage if it helps with your statement. Inside the house was transformed. The familiar furniture gone, replaced by industrial equipment. Computers, monitors, filing systems. Catherine Chen emerged from grandmother's former study laptop in hand. Rachel, I'm sorry about the circumstances. My father... In custody. Arraignment tomorrow morning. She gestured to a bank of monitors. Would you like to see what happened? I nodded, though my stomach churned. Catherine pulled up the footage, multiple angles syncing to tell the story. 11:47 p.m. My father's Lexus pulls up, followed by a moving truck. 4 men exit, including Mark. They wear black clothing, surgical gloves. My father produces keys, the ones I'd given back to my parents years ago, never thinking to change the locks. 11:52 p.m. They discover the locks have been changed. My father's face contorts with rage. He kicks the door, then pulls out a crowbar. The respectable businessman becomes a common burglar. 11:58 p.m. The door splinters. Alarms shriek. My father shouts orders, directing men to specific rooms. The Tiffany lamps first, then the silver quick before. 12:01 a.m. Police arrive. My father tries to run, then fights when cornered, throws punches like a drunk frat boy. Deputy Chen takes him down with professional efficiency. But it was the audio that broke something in me. As they cuffed him, my father ranted. About me, about Dorothy, about everyone who'd betrayed him. My daughter's a traitor, selling out her family for money. Just like her grandmother always thought she was better than us. I should have known she'd turn out worthless. spending all that money on her education, and she destroys us. The Chinese bitch probably promised her a cut. The slurs continued. Racial epithets about Dorothy, misogynistic rants about women in business, threats against me that made the deputies exchange glances. This wasn't a desperate father. This was an entitled man who'd never faced consequences falling apart at the first touch of justice. "I've seen enough," I said quietly. Catherine closed the laptop. "I'm sorry. That must be difficult to hear." "It's clarifying, actually. He's showing who he always was. The mask just finally slipped." "My mother wanted you to know the retreat center is still planned. This doesn't change anything. If anything, it reinforces the need." Women rebuilding after financial abuse, I remembered. Like your mother did. Like you're doing now. She touched my shoulder gently. It's not easy breaking free from toxic family, but it's necessary. We talked for another hour about the renovation plans, about the support programs they'd offer, about turning a house built on love corrupted by greed into something healing again. As I prepared to leave, Catherine handed me an envelope from my mother. I opened it in my car, a single paragraph in Dorothy's precise handwriting. "Your father's arrest is only the beginning. Every crime has been documented, every victim identified. Justice will be thorough and complete. You may wish to distance yourself from what's coming, but know this. You gave them every chance to be better. They chose this path. What follows is their harvest, not yours." I drove back to Boston as dawn broke. My phone had 63 missed calls, the family network in full panic mode. But I felt strangely calm. The man in that video wasn't my father. He was the person my father had always been when he thought no one was watching. The racist, misogynistic criminal who'd worn a respectable mask for decades. That mask was gone now. The world would see Thomas Hamilton as he truly was, and maybe finally I could stop pretending he'd ever been anything else. My phone rang. Sheriff Thompson. "Thought you should know. Your brother-in-law, Mark, just turned himself in. He's offering to testify against your father in exchange for leniency. Says he has recordings of your family planning various crimes." "Recordings?" "Apparently he's been documenting everything for months. Insurance, he calls it. Your sister's fake pregnancy, the forgery plans for the house. Kid's got hours of audio." Another betrayal. Or was it justice in my family the line had blurred beyond recognition? "Thanks for letting me know." "Rachel, I'm sorry about all this. Your grandmother was a good woman. She'd be proud of you for standing up to them." After he hung up, I sat in my apartment watching the sunrise. Somewhere my father was in a cell. My mother was probably pacing her empty house calling lawyers who wouldn't take her case. My sister was on the run. The family I'd grown up in was destroyed. And I felt nothing but relief. The break-in wasn't just a crime. It was a revelation. The moment when everyone could finally see what I'd always known, that beneath the respectable surface, my family was rotten to the core. Dorothy Chen had simply provided the stage for them to reveal themselves. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Saw the news. You okay?" "Getting there," I replied. And I was. Because every revelation, every arrest, every exposed lie took me further from their influence and closer to the person my grandmother had always believed I could be. Someone who chose truth over comfort, justice over blood. Someone free. The Woodstock County Courthouse stood like a brick monument to small-town justice, its white columns attempting gravitas despite the peeling paint. I arrived early for my father's arraignment, choosing a back row seat where I could observe without being immediately noticed. The courtroom filled slowly with curious townspeople, local reporters, and a surprising number of faces I recognized from my parents' social circle. Dorothy Chen entered exactly at 9, and the room's energy shifted. She moved with deliberate calm, her charcoal suit, impeccable, her presence commanding attention without effort. Behind her came a team of lawyers that probably cost more per hour than most people in the room made in a month. She took a seat in the front row directly in the prosecutor's line of sight. My mother arrived minutes later, her usual careful appearance disheveled. She'd clearly dressed in a hurry. Her signature pearls clasped wrong lipstick slightly smeared. When she spotted Dorothy, her face went through a series of expressions: shock, rage, fear, and finally a kind of desperate calculation. "You," Patricia's voice cracked across the courtroom. "How dare you show your face here?" Dorothy turned slowly, as if noticing an unpleasant smell. "Mrs. Hamilton, I have every right to attend public proceedings involving my property." "Your property?" My mother's laugh was borderline hysterical. "You stole it." "I purchased it, legally, unlike your family's approach to acquisition." The bailiff stepped forward. "Ma'am, please take a seat." Patricia spotted me, then her eyes narrowing. There she is, the ungrateful daughter who sold us out. She started toward me, but her lawyer, not Sternberg I noticed, but some harried public defender, grabbed her arm. "Not here," he hissed. "You're making it worse." The side door opened and my father shuffled in, wearing Orange County jail clothing. The sight hit me harder than expected. Thomas Hamilton, who'd never worn anything less formal than khakis, reduced to an inmate number. His face sported bruises from his struggle with deputies, and his usual commanding posture had crumpled into something defensive. Judge Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, took the bench. "Case number 2024 CR 0847 State versus Thomas Hamilton. Charges include breaking and entering, attempted grand theft, property damage, assault on a peace officer, and resisting arrest." The prosecutor, ADA Sarah Winters, stood. "Your Honor, we're also adding charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and filing false legal documents based on evidence discovered during the arrest." Objection. The public defender looked overwhelmed. "We haven't been informed of additional charges." "Evidence came to light last night, Your Honor. The defendant was recorded discussing previous crimes while being arrested." Judge Morrison nodded. "I'll allow it. How does the defendant plead?" My father stood shakily. "Not guilty, Your Honor. This is all a misunderstanding. That house belongs to my family." "Mr. Hamilton, you're advised to let your attorney speak for you. But I need to explain my mother-in-law left that property in trust." "Mr. Hamilton." Judge Morrison's voice cut like a blade. "One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." The prosecutor continued smoothly. "The state requests bail be set at $500,000 given the defendant's resources and flight risk. We have evidence he was planning to flee to Costa Rica after liquidating stolen assets." "That's absurd," my father exploded. "I'm a respected businessman who broke into someone's home with a crowbar." Ada Winters said dryly, "We have extensive video evidence, Your Honor. Multiple angles, clear audio. The defendant can be heard making threats against the property owner and his own daughter." My stomach clenched as she played a portion of the audio. My father's voice filled the courtroom, slurring racial epithets about Dorothy and calling me a worthless traitor who deserved what was coming. Several people gasped. In the front row, Dorothy remained perfectly still. Additionally, the prosecutor continued, "We've been contacted by multiple victims of the defendant's previous fraudulent activities. This appears to be part of a 20-year pattern of financial crimes." "Your Honor," the public defender tried, "my client has deep ties to the community, which he used to perpetrate frauds." Ada Winters interrupted. "We have sworn affidavits from 6 local business owners detailing how Mr. Hamilton extracted investments for non-existent ventures." The blood drained from my mother's face as she realized the scope of what was unfolding. This wasn't just about the house anymore. Dorothy had provided prosecutors with everything. 2 decades of evidence my grandmother had collected wrapped in a bow. "Bail is set at $500,000, Judge Morrison declared. "Cash or bond. Next court date is November 15th. "Your Honor, my client can't possibly—" "Then he remains in custody. Next case." As they led my father out, he spotted Dorothy. The look that passed between them was electric with hatred. Then his eyes found me, and something worse flickered there. a kind of shocked betrayal, as if he couldn't believe I'd let this happen. Outside the courthouse, chaos erupted. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. My mother was screaming at Dorothy's lawyers, accusing them of manufacturing evidence. I tried to slip away, but Dorothy intercepted me. "Walk with me," she said quietly. We moved away from the crowd, her security detail creating a buffer. In the parking lot, she turned to face me fully. "You needed to see who I am," she said. "Not the victim your parents created, but who I became because of it. You orchestrated all of this." I revealed truth. Your parents orchestrated their own downfall 20 years ago when they chose to destroy me. The other victims who came forward were contacted by my investigators, yes, offered support to finally speak up. Your parents left a trail of destroyed lives, Rachel. I simply illuminated it. And my grandmother knew. Dorothy's expression softened slightly. Eleanor was the only one who tried to warn me. She couldn't stop them. They were her family. She was already ill. But she documented everything, kept evidence. I think she knew someday it would matter. She was building a case for you. She was building justice. It just took 20 years to prosecute. We stood in silence, watching reporters chase my mother's car as she fled. The dignified society matron reduced to a headline, "Local businessman charged in 20-year fraud scheme." "What happens now?" I asked. "Your father will likely spend years in prison. Your mother will lose everything. The house, the social position, the illusion of respectability. Your sister will be caught eventually. Mark Thompson's testimony will ensure that." "You've thought of everything." "I've had time." She studied me carefully. "You're angry." I paused, examining my feelings. "I'm relieved and horrified and satisfied and guilty for feeling satisfied. It's complicated." "It should be. They're your family, however toxic. But Rachel understands something. This isn't revenge. It's balance. They took my life's work, my marriage, my trust in people. They built their comfort on my devastation. Now they're simply experiencing what they inflicted." The retreat center will help women like I was, like you are now, women whose families chose greed over love, manipulation over truth. Your grandmother's house will become what she would have wanted, a place of healing instead of harm. A commotion drew our attention. Mark Thompson was being escorted into the courthouse in handcuffs, reporters capturing every moment. He looked terrified, nothing like the cocky man who'd helped plan the theft of my home. "Your sister's husband has been very cooperative," Dorothy noted. "Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. He's testifying against everyone, your parents, your sister, even peripheral players. He recorded hundreds of hours of conversations. Your family, it seems, trusted the wrong person." "They never trusted anyone. They just thought they controlled him. The most dangerous betrayals come from those we underestimate." She checked her phone. "I have a meeting with the prosecutor. We're discussing the civil suits." "Civil suits? Fraud, theft, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation. The criminal cases are just the beginning. I intend to recover every penny they stole, plus interest and damages." "You'll destroy them completely." "They destroyed themselves. I'm simply collecting the debt." As she walked away, her team falling into formation around her, I understood the full scope of what I'd unleashed. Dorothy Chen wasn't just taking the house. She was systematically dismantling my parents' entire existence, using their own crimes as the wrecking ball. My phone rang. Louise, my aunt. "Rachel, I just left the courthouse. Your mother's in hysterics. She says that woman is Satan incarnate. She's a businesswoman collecting a debt. She's destroying your family." "No, Louise, my family destroyed themselves. Dorothy's just presenting the bill." "How can you be so cold about this? How were you so silent when they were stealing from others? You knew, didn't you? About their schemes." Silence. Then I suspected. But they were family. So was I. "Did you protect me when they tried to steal my inheritance?" "That's different." No, it's not. You all looked away when they hurt others because it was convenient. Now it's inconvenient. That's the only difference. I hung up and sat in my car processing the morning's revelations. Through the courthouse windows, I could see Dorothy's team setting up for more meetings. The woman my parents had dismissed as too soft for business was proving to be their worst nightmare. Patient, thorough, and utterly committed to justice. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine Chen. Renovation plans are ready for review. Would you like to participate in designing the healing spaces? I thought about my grandmother's house becoming a refuge for women escaping financial abuse, about Dorothy's patience in pursuit of justice, about my own journey from complicit silence to active truth-telling. Yes, I texted back. I want to help build something better. Because that's what Dorothy Chen had shown me. You couldn't just tear down corruption, you had to build something meaningful in its place. My parents had built their lives on lies and theft. Now their victim was building truth and healing on the very ground they'd tried to steal. The symmetry was perfect, the justice poetic, and I was finally free to appreciate both. The police station conference room smelled of burnt coffee and industrial disinfectant. Through the window, I could see November's first snow beginning to fall on Woodstock's main street. I'd been summoned as a witness, but what unfolded over the next 3 hours would reveal depths of deception I'd never imagined possible. Detective Martinez had assembled what looked like a museum exhibit of my family's crimes. Boxes of evidence lined one wall. Financial documents covered the conference table. A laptop displayed spreadsheets that mapped 2 decades of fraud. Dorothy Chen sat at the far end, composed as always, while her legal team took notes. Ms. Hamilton. Martinez began, "Thank you for coming. We need to walk through some discoveries that require your input." Of course. He pulled out a thick folder. "These are bank records from accounts we didn't know existed. Your parents maintained 14 separate accounts under various business names. Shell companies, essentially. Money flowed in from investors and out to personal expenses. I studied the statements. Hamilton Financial Consulting, Patricia's Pearls LLC, Green Mountain Ventures, each one a ghost company with real victims. This one troubles me most." Martinez pointed to a statement. "Eleanor Hamilton Memorial Fund, supposedly for cancer research in your grandmother's name." My hands clenched. They created a fake charity. Raised over $300,000 from your grandmother's friends after she died. The money went straight to covering their mortgage and Sarah's credit cards. Dorothy spoke quietly. "Your grandmother would have been heartbroken." "She never knew." "She died believing the best of them," Dorothy said. "Perhaps that was a mercy." The door opened and Mark Thompson entered with his lawyer and a federal marshal. He looked like he'd aged years in days, his usual swagger replaced by desperate self-preservation. He carried a laptop bag like it contained nuclear codes. "Mr. Thompson has agreed to full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges," his lawyer announced. "He's prepared to provide complete documentation of the Hamilton family's criminal enterprises." Criminal enterprises. I laughed bitterly. They ran a suburban household, not the mafia. "You'd be surprised," Mark muttered, opening his laptop. "Your family made the mob look ethical." For the next hour, Mark walked us through his evidence. Videos, audio recordings, text messages, emails. He'd been documenting everything for 2 years initially to protect himself when he realized what he'd married into. The first video made me nauseous. Sunday dinner at my parents' house 6 months ago. I remembered being there making small talk while unaware Mark's phone was recording from the centerpiece. "The beauty of the memorial fund," my father was saying, "is that people donate emotionally. They don't ask for documentation. We've pulled in 50 grand this quarter alone." "Isn't that illegal?" Mark's voice asked. Sarah laughed. "Only if someone reports it. Who's going to accuse grieving family members of fraud? Besides, we do give some to charity, 10%. That makes it legitimate." "Actually," my mother added, cutting her pot roast, "we need to expand. I'm thinking a scholarship fund for disadvantaged youth. People love helping kids." "Like the Chen Fund?" Sarah asked. The one you emptied. Dorothy's fund was poorly managed, Thomas said smoothly. We simply redirected resources more efficiently. You mean you stole it, Mark said. We repurposed it, Patricia corrected. Really, Mark, you must learn to use proper terminology if you're going to be family. The video continued, each revelation worse than the last. They discussed targeting elderly neighbors for investment schemes, debated which of my grandmother's friends were wealthy enough to approach about the memorial fund, planned how to manipulate me into signing over the house. Rachel's too trusting, Sarah said in the recording. Tell her it's for my pregnancy, she'll cave. She always wants to help family. The pregnancy angle is brilliant, my mother agreed. No one questions helping a pregnant woman. Detective Martinez paused the video. This establishes conspiracy to commit fraud, but it gets worse. The next recording was audio only dated 3 years ago. My parents' voices, but also another I recognized with a chill. Their lawyer, David Sternberg. The will is ironclad, Sternberg was saying. Eleanor made sure Rachel gets the house, but there are ways around it. Such as, my father asked. Guardianship fraud. Claim Eleanor was mentally incompetent when she made the will. Or better yet, create documents suggesting Rachel agreed to different terms. Forgery. Document revision. Much more elegant. I have a specialist who can age papers, create backdated agreements for the right price. How much? $50,000. But you'll make millions on that property. They haggled over price like they were buying a used car, not planning to defraud me. By the end, they'd agreed on $30,000 plus a percentage of the house sale. Turn it off, I said quietly. I've heard enough. But Mark wasn't done. You haven't seen the best part. He pulled up a folder labeled Dorothy Chen Complete File. My blood froze. They kept records on Dorothy. 20 years worth. Your parents documented everything they stole like trophies. The file was meticulous. Patents stolen 12. Innovations sold to competitors 8. Money diverted from the partnership $2.3 million. They'd even kept Dorothy's desperate emails begging for explanation, for mercy, for justice. One email dated 15 years ago made Dorothy close her eyes. Patricia Thomas, I don't understand. The patents were in my name. The innovations were my work. How can they suddenly belong to Tecton Industries? Please, my daughter needs surgery. If you could just return some of the partnership funds. My mother's response was attached, Dorothy, business is complex. Perhaps if you'd been more attentive to paperwork, this confusion could have been avoided. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. They knew her daughter needed surgery. I asked. Dorothy nodded tightly. Catherine required spinal surgery. I had to sell our house to pay for it. We lived in my car for 3 months afterward. While my parents bought their Connecticut estate, I said the pieces clicking together. The timing matches. To the day, Dorothy confirmed. They closed on their dream house the same week I was explaining to Catherine why we had to leave ours. Mark pulled up more files, photos of Dorothy's original lab before my parents sold the equipment. Business plans she'd written later presented as my father's ideas, even recordings of meetings where they discussed her naively trusting nature. The fool actually believes we're partners. My father's younger voice laughed. She does the work, we reap the rewards. It's perfect. What if she realizes, Patricia asked, and does what sue us with what money? By the time she understands what happened, we'll have buried her in legal fees. Besides, who'll believe her Chinese immigrant versus established American business family? The casual racism made me flinch. Dorothy remained stone-faced, but her lawyer was typing furiously. There's more about you, Mark said quietly, clicking another folder. They've been planning to take your inheritance since before your grandmother died. The documents went back 5 years, medical records showing my grandmother's cancer diagnosis, financial projections based on selling her house, even drafts of the forged documents they eventually used, practiced over and over until they got my signature right. But the worst was a conversation recorded just weeks before grandmother died. She was in hospice, and my parents were in her house supposedly organizing things. Check the desk again. Patricia's voice. There has to be a codicil somewhere. She wouldn't leave everything to Rachel without provisions. Nothing, Thomas replied. The old bat was sharper than we thought. Everything's locked up legally. Then we make our own provisions. Once she's gone, who's to say what she really wanted? Rachel will fight us. Rachel's weak, always wanting mommy and daddy's approval. We'll make her feel guilty, selfish. She'll give in like she always does. I stood abruptly, needing air. The room spun slightly. All those years of seeking their approval, and they'd seen it as weakness to exploit. Take your time, Martinez said gently. But Dorothy stood too. No, she needs to hear all of it. The truth is painful, but ignorance is worse. She was right. I sat back down, steeling myself. Mark continued his presentation. Financial records showing my parents living beyond their means for decades, always one scheme away from bankruptcy. Sarah's business was a front funded entirely by stolen money and producing nothing. The Connecticut house had been refinanced 4 times each mortgage used to cover previous frauds. And they were going to run, Mark said finally. After selling Rachel's house, they planned to transfer everything offshore and disappear. Leave you and Sarah holding the bag for their crimes. Leave Sarah, I asked. Their golden child. Look at this. He showed an email thread from last month. My parents discussing their retirement plan to Costa Rica. No mention of Sarah or her fictional baby. Just 2 criminals planning their escape. They were going to abandon everyone, I said quietly. Even each other, probably. Actually, Mark pulled up one final document. Your father was already setting up accounts in just his name. Your mother had a separate lawyer preparing divorce papers. They were each planning to screw the other and run with the money. The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics. 20 years of deception laid bare on a conference table. My family wasn't just criminal, they were cannibals ready to devour even each other for profit. This is comprehensive evidence for multiple federal charges, Martinez said finally. Fraud, tax, evasion, money laundering, racketeering. We're talking decades in prison. Good, Dorothy said simply. They stole decades from their victims. It's only fair they pay with their own. Mark's lawyer spoke up. My client will testify to all of this in exchange for 2 years maximum served in minimum security. That seems reasonable given his cooperation, the federal prosecutor said. As they negotiated Mark's deal, I stared at the evidence surrounding us. My entire life built on lies and theft. Every birthday gift, every college payment, every family vacation, all funded by other people's misery. You're not responsible for their crimes, Dorothy said quietly, reading my expression. You were a child, then a victim yourself. I benefited from them. So did I once. I thought their investment in my company was legitimate. We all believed their lies until we couldn't anymore. Martinez began packing up evidence boxes. Ms. Hamilton will need you to testify about the attempted theft of your house. Of course. And Rachel. Dorothy stood gathering her team. The retreat center will have a scholarship fund, a real one, for women rebuilding their lives after financial abuse. We'd like to call it the Eleanor Hamilton Memorial Scholarship, with your permission. Tears burned my eyes. She'd have loved that. After everyone left, I sat alone in the conference room processing what I'd learned. My phone buzzed with messages from family members still defending my parents, still believing their lies. But I'd seen the truth now documented in painful detail. They weren't misunderstood. They weren't desperate. They were predators who happened to share my DNA. And thanks to Mark's paranoid documentation and Dorothy's patient pursuit of justice, they would finally face consequences for decades of destruction. Outside snow was falling harder, covering Woodstock in clean white. Like the truth covering lies, I thought. Eventually, no matter how deep the deception reality breaks through. I drove home through the storm, feeling strangely peaceful. The secrets were exposed, the predators unmasked, and for the first time in my life, I was free from their influence. My phone rang as I reached Boston. Catherine Chen. "We're breaking ground on the retreat center next month," she said. "Would you like to speak at the ceremony about your grandmother about breaking cycles?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I want to help others see what I couldn't for so long. That family isn't an excuse for enabling abuse. That love doesn't require blindness to evil." Because that's what Mark's recordings and Dorothy's evidence had shown me. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like Sunday dinner pearl necklaces and parental smiles. The real courage isn't in maintaining those illusions. It's in shattering them completely. The federal courthouse in Burlington commanded respect with its marble columns and bronze eagles, a temple to justice that made our small-town proceedings look quaint. I arrived early on a crisp December morning, watching my breath cloud in the cold air as I climbed the steps. Today, the full weight of federal law would fall on my parents. The courtroom was packed. Financial crimes that crossed state lines had attracted federal attention media coverage, and dozens of victims I'd never known existed. I recognized some faces from Woodstock. Others were strangers united by one thing. My parents had stolen from them all. Dorothy sat in the front row with her legal team impeccable as always in navy wool. Beside her sat a woman I didn't recognize until she turned. Catherine's colleague who'd lost her retirement savings to one of my father's phantom investments. Behind them, row after row of victims. The human cost of my parents' greed filled the gallery. The prosecution team looked like corporate sharks. 3 attorneys from the Department of Justice specialists in financial fraud. They'd taken over from local prosecutors when the scope became clear. 20 years, 14 states, over 200 victims, and nearly $50 million in combined theft. My mother entered first, flanked by federal marshals. Prison had already changed her. The designer clothes replaced by a plain gray suit from Target. Her perfectly styled hair now showed gray roots. But it was her posture that struck me most. The imperious bearing had crumbled into something defensive and small. Thomas followed orange jumpsuit traded for a cheap suit that hung wrong on his diminished frame. 3 weeks in federal custody had erased his businessman's polish. He looked like what he was, a common criminal facing the consequences of decades of deception. They sat at separate defense tables. The United Front had shattered when each hired different lawyers and began blaming the other. I'd heard they weren't even speaking, each convinced the other had ruined their perfect scheme. Judge Harrison presided, a silver-haired woman with eyes like surgical instruments. She'd made her reputation prosecuting white-collar crime and suffered no fools. As she reviewed the charges, her expression suggested she'd already measured my parents and found them wanting. United States versus Patricia Hamilton and Thomas Hamilton. Charges include conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, money laundering operation of fraudulent charitable organizations, and violation of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. RICO charges. They were being prosecuted like organized crime bosses, which I suppose they were. The lead prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney James Mitchell, stood. "Your Honor, the government has evidence of a 20-year pattern of sophisticated fraud. The defendants created an intricate web of shell companies, fake charities, and phantom investments. They targeted vulnerable populations, elderly retirees, immigrant entrepreneurs, grieving families." He pulled up a presentation, charts showing money flow, victim testimonies, a map with red pins in 14 states where they'd operated. The scope was staggering. The defendants didn't just steal money, Mitchell continued. They stole futures, retirements destroyed, businesses bankrupted, children's education funds emptied, medical treatments delayed or denied because victims couldn't afford them after being defrauded. One by one, victims stood as their names were read. An elderly couple who'd lost their farm to one of my father's agricultural investment schemes. A young entrepreneur who'd trusted my parents with her startup capital. A widower who donated his wife's life insurance to their fake cancer charity. Dorothy stood when called. Dorothy Chen defrauded of $2.3 million in intellectual property and partnership assets. Can you describe the impact? Mitchell asked. Dorothy's voice carried clearly. I lost my company, my home, my marriage. My daughter required surgery I couldn't afford because the defendants had stolen funds earmarked for her care. We experienced homelessness. I rebuilt from nothing while watching the defendants live luxuriously on money they stole from me. My mother's lawyer objected. Prejudicial testimony, Your Honor. Overruled. The court needs to understand the full impact of these crimes. More victims testified, each story a variation on the same theme: trust, betrayed lives, destroyed dreams, shattered on the rocks of my parents' greed. By the 10th testimony, my father had stopped maintaining his innocent expression. By the 20th, my mother was crying, though whether from remorse or self-pity was unclear. Then Mark took the stand. He'd traded his usual designer clothes for a conservative suit, playing the reformed criminal perfectly. His testimony was devastating in its detail. I recorded everything because I realized I'd married into a criminal enterprise, he said. Sarah Hamilton told me her parents had taught her that legitimate business was for suckers, that only fools worked when you could steal. He played recordings, my parents' planning schemes, Sarah learning their methods, the whole family treating fraud like a hereditary profession. Each piece of evidence built their walls higher. Mr. Thompson, the prosecutor asked, did the defendants ever express remorse for their victims? Never. They called victims marks or pigeons. Patricia Hamilton once said, bleeding hearts deserve to be bled dry. Thomas Hamilton taught that empathy was a weakness to be exploited. My mother's attorney tried to shake Mark on cross-examination, but he'd been too thorough. Every claim backed by documentation, every accusation supported by recordings. He was saving himself by burying them, and he'd brought enough shovels for everyone. During a recess, I escaped to the hallway for air. Dorothy found me by the windows overlooking the winter cityscape. It's harder than you expected, she said, not a question. They're monsters, I said. But they're still my parents. Some stupid part of me keeps looking for signs they understand what they've done. They understand perfectly. They just don't care. She stood beside me, both of us watching snow fall on Burlington. I looked for remorse for years, wrote letters asking for simple acknowledgement. They responded with lawyers and threats. How did you survive it, the betrayal? By building something they couldn't steal. Knowledge, skills, integrity. The company I built after they destroyed my first one is worth 100 times what they took. But more importantly, I built it honestly. And now you're destroying them. No. Her voice was firm. I'm revealing them. They destroyed themselves the moment they chose crime over conscience. The afternoon brought forensic accountants who detailed the money trail. Spreadsheets projected on screens showed the labyrinth of theft. Fake companies invoicing each other, circular transfers to hide origins, money flowing from victims through shells to my parents' personal accounts. The defendants maintained meticulous records. The forensic analyst testified. They documented their crimes in detail, apparently believing they'd never be caught. We have 20 years of evidence, all in their own handwriting or digital footprints. The defense attorneys tried various strategies. My mother's lawyer painted her as a dutiful wife, following her husband's lead. My father's attorney claimed he was a legitimate businessman whose ventures simply failed. Neither story held against the mountain of evidence. Then came the moment I dreaded. The prosecutor called me to testify. State your name for the record. Rachel Hamilton. Your relationship to the defendants. They're my parents. The words felt strange, acknowledging the connection in a federal courtroom. Can you describe the attempted theft of your inherited property? I told the story simply. The forged signatures, the threats, the break-in. I kept my voice steady, clinical, treating it like any case I'd handled as a lawyer. Just facts, no emotion. Did you know about your parents' other activities? No, I believed they were legitimate business people until recently. How do you feel about their crimes? I looked at my parents for the first time since entering the courtroom. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father stared with something between hatred and disbelief, as if I were the criminal for exposing them. I paused, choosing words carefully. I feel profound sadness for their victims, shame that I benefited unknowingly from their crimes, and relief that justice is finally being served. No further questions. Neither defense attorney wanted to cross-examine me. What could they ask whether I was lying about my own inheritance theft? Mark had provided video evidence. Whether I was a disloyal daughter, that ship had sailed. As I left the stand, my father spoke despite his lawyer's grip on his arm. "You destroyed our family." Judge Harrison's gavel cracked. "Mr. Hamilton, control yourself or be removed." "She's my daughter," he shouted. "She owes us everything. Her education, her career, her life. We made her." "With stolen money," I said quietly, but the courtroom acoustics carried my words. "You made me with other people's misery." The judge had him removed. As marshals dragged him out, he kept screaming about ungrateful children, about family loyalty, about betrayal. The courtroom sat in shocked silence until the doors closed behind him. "We'll take a brief recess," Judge Harrison said, but her eyes found mine. Something like approval flickered there, or maybe understanding. In the hallway, victims approached me, not with anger, but with something unexpected: gratitude. "Thank you for standing up to them," the elderly farmer said. "My own kids said I should let it go, not make waves, but you showed it's okay to demand justice even from kin." "Especially from kin," his wife added. "Family shouldn't be a shield for evil." Others shared similar sentiments. My testimony had given them permission to stop feeling guilty about seeking justice. If their daughter could face the truth, so could they. When court reconvened, my father wasn't permitted back. His attorney made excuses about emotional distress, but the damage was done. His outburst had shown the entitlement beneath the criminal behavior. Closing arguments were brutal. The prosecution painted my parents as sophisticated predators who'd turned fraud into a family business. The defense tried to humanize them, but how do you humanize 20 years of deliberate cruelty? "The defendants want you to see them as failed entrepreneurs," Mitchell concluded. "But entrepreneurs create value. The defendants only destroyed it. They built nothing, produced nothing, contributed nothing. They were parasites feeding on others' trust, and like all parasites, they killed their hosts without remorse." As we waited for the verdict, Dorothy's team prepared civil suits. Criminal conviction would make civil recovery easier. She intended to reclaim every penny plus damages. "Will it bring back 20 years?" I asked. "No," Dorothy said simply, "but it will fund the retreat center for decades. Their theft will ultimately help other victims. There's justice in that transformation." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, their expressions told the story before the foreman spoke. "Guilty, all charges, both defendants." Patricia collapsed. Not her practiced faint, but genuine shock. She'd believed until the end that she'd escape consequences, that someone would save her, that tears and manipulation would work on a federal jury as they'd worked on family. Thomas returned for the verdict, stood stoically, but I saw his hands tremble as the reality hit. Federal prison, asset forfeiture. Everything he'd built through crime would be stripped away. Sentencing would come later, but the prosecutor indicated they'd seek maximum penalties, 25 to life given the scope and duration of their crimes. As marshals led them away, neither parent looked at me. But Dorothy did, and in her eyes I saw what justice looked like, not vengeful or gleeful, but satisfied, complete. Outside the courthouse, snow fell heavier. Reporters waited, but I had nothing to say. What words could capture watching your parents revealed as criminals condemned by their own greed? Jennifer waited by my car. "You did the right thing." "I know, it still hurts." "It should. If it didn't, you'd be like them." As I drove back to Boston, I thought about the retreat center rising from my grandmother's house, about the scholarship fund in her name, about the victims who'd found their voices, about Dorothy's transformation from victim to victor. My parents had taught me many things, mostly by negative example, but their greatest lesson came at the end that justice delayed isn't justice denied. It's justice compounded with interest. And the interest on 20 years of crime had finally come due. The morning after the verdict, I woke to 37 voicemails and twice as many texts. Extended family, friends, and people I hadn't heard from in years all wanted to express their opinions about my betrayal. I deleted them unheard and unread. Their judgments meant nothing compared to the freedom I felt. My first call was to Jennifer. I need a forensic accountant, the best you know. Finally ready to look into your own finances. If my parents stole from everyone else, why would I be different? I'll have someone at your apartment in 2 hours. Marcus Chen, no relation to Dorothy, arrived with 3 laptops and a briefcase full of portable drives. He looked more like a tech startup CEO than an accountant. Young, sharp, with eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Hamilton, I've reviewed the court documents. Your parents were thorough in their documentation. That's good for us. Criminals who keep records make my job easier. We spread out across my dining table. Bank statements, tax returns, investment accounts, everything financial from the last 15 years. Marcus worked with surgical precision, cross-referencing dates, tracking transfers, following money like breadcrumbs through a digital forest. Here, he said after 2 hours, pointing at his screen, this is where it starts. I leaned in to look. My trust fund established by grandmother when I was 18. The initial deposit was $100,000. But the records showed irregular activity. Deposits that didn't match grandmother's contributions, withdrawals I'd never made. They were using your trust as a washing machine, Marcus explained. Money in from victims out to their accounts disguised as educational expenses. But look here, they got greedy. He pulled up another screen. Investment accounts in my name I didn't know existed. Credit cards I'd never applied for. Even a business loan for a company I'd never heard of. Identity theft, I breathed, from their own daughter. Going back 14 years, they've been destroying your credit, creating tax liabilities, setting you up as a fall guy if their schemes collapsed. He turned to me with something like pity. Ms. Hamilton, you're not just their daughter. You're one of their biggest victims. The numbers were staggering. Over $300,000 stolen through various schemes. My credit score, which I'd thought was decent, was artificially inflated by minimum payments they made to keep the fraud hidden. The real damage would have surfaced the moment they fled to Costa Rica. Can we recover it? With the criminal conviction, absolutely. But there's more. He pulled up tax records. You've been paying taxes on money you never received. The IRS owes you significant refunds. And these fraudulent loans, the banks will have to eat them once we prove identity theft. I felt a strange mix of violation and vindication. They hadn't just tried to steal my house. They'd been stealing from me since I became a legal adult. Every proud moment of financial independence had been an illusion. What do I do? Marcus smiled grimly. We document everything. File police reports. Contact credit bureaus. Pursue civil suits. Your parents didn't just commit crimes. They made you an unwitting accomplice. We're going to untangle every thread. As he worked, I called Dorothy. She answered on the first ring. I heard about the forensic audit. Find anything interesting? They stole my identity. Hundreds of thousands in fraud, all in my name. A pause. I'm not surprised. Predators don't see family as off limits. They see them as easier targets. I want to pursue everything. Criminal charges, civil suits, full restitution. Good, my legal team is at your disposal. Rachel, I know this feels like another betrayal, but it's actually liberation. You're finally seeing the full truth. After Marcus left with boxes of evidence, I sat in my quiet apartment processing what I'd learned. My phone rang. Louise, my aunt. Don't hang up, she said quickly. I know you're angry with the family. The family who's calling me a traitor. That family. I'm calling to apologize and to share something. She paused. I've been getting my own finances reviewed. Patricia and Thomas got me too. $40,000 in a family investment that never existed. Why didn't you say something during the trial? Fear, shame, the same reasons I stayed quiet for 20 years. But watching you stand up to them, it gave me courage. It's not too late to file a complaint. Already done. My lawyer says with their conviction, recovery is likely. Rachel, you did the right thing. We all knew something was wrong, but you're the only one who acted. After we hung up, more calls came. Cousins admitting they'd been scammed. Family friends discovering fraudulent charges. The network of denial was crumbling as people finally felt safe to speak truth. That evening, I met with Jennifer and Dorothy's legal team at a restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor. James Wu had prepared a comprehensive strategy for civil recovery. With the criminal conviction, we can pierce all their shell companies, he explained. Every hidden asset, every offshore account. The federal asset forfeiture will take most of it, but victims have priority claims. How much are we talking about? Your personal losses with interest and damages about $2 million. The identity theft alone carries severe penalties. $2 million. More than I'd ever dreamed of having, yet it was just returning what was stolen. I want half to go to the retreat center, I said impulsively. Dorothy looked surprised. That's generous but unnecessary. My grandmother would want her house used to help others. Consider it her final donation, just 20 years delayed. We'll name a wing after her, Dorothy said softly. She deserves to be remembered for who she was not, what they did. The next morning brought a surprise. Mark Thompson called from federal custody. I have something else, he said without preamble. Sarah doesn't know I kept this. It's about you specifically. What kind of something? Recordings of your parents planning your future. It's bad, Rachel. Really bad. Can you come to the federal detention center? My lawyer says I can share it as part of my cooperation. Against my better judgment, I went. The facility was sterile and depressing, all concrete and fluorescent lights. Mark looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, the confident businessman reduced to an inmate number. In the attorney meeting room, he pulled out a tablet his lawyer had brought. Sarah made me record this. Insurance, she called it. From last year when they thought you were getting too successful. He pressed play. My parents' voices filled the room, discussing me like a business problem to be solved. Rachel's getting too independent, my mother said. Senior associate at her firm talking about partnership. If she makes partner, she'll have resources to investigate. So we accelerate the timeline, my father responded. The house theft needs to happen now before she gets too powerful to manipulate. What if she refuses? Then we activate the contingencies. The credit cards, the loans, the tax issues. Overwhelm her with financial problems. She'll be too busy saving herself to fight us. And if that doesn't work, a pause. Then my father's voice cold and calculating. There are other ways to handle problem children. Remember what we did to Sarah's first boyfriend when he threatened to expose us? Thomas, you can't mean... I mean whatever's necessary. 20 years of work won't be undone by an ungrateful daughter. If Rachel becomes a threat, we handle her like any other threat. I felt sick. Mark stopped the recording. There's more, he said quietly. Discussions about causing an accident, making you disappear. They were planning contingencies for if you fought the house sale. They were planning to kill me. The words came out strangled. Planning for the possibility. Sarah said they'd never actually do it, but... He shrugged. I've learned not to underestimate your family's capacity for evil. I left the detention center in a daze. My parents hadn't just seen me as a victim to exploit, they'd seen me as a potential problem to eliminate. The people who gave me life had coldly discussed taking it if I interfered with their crimes. Back in my car, I called Detective Martinez. I need to report additional evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. Whose murder? Mine. The next hours blurred, giving statements, listening to more recordings, learning that what happened to Sarah's first boyfriend involved a suspicious car accident after he'd threatened to report their tax evasion. He'd survived, but left the state too terrified to pursue justice. By evening, new charges were being prepared: conspiracy to commit murder, witness intimidation. The federal prosecutor assured me these would add decades to their sentences. "You're safe now," Martinez said. "They're never getting out." Safe. I tested the word, found it fit. For the first time in my life, I was safe from my own family. That night, I met Catherine at the Vermont property. The house was stripped bare, ready for renovation. We walked through empty rooms discussing plans for the retreat center. "This will be the legal aid office," she said, gesturing to what had been my father's study. "Free services for financial abuse victims." "Poetic justice," I murmured. "All justice is poetic when you think about it. Balance restored, harmony returned. Your grandmother's house helping victims of people like your parents. That's poetry." In grandmother's former bedroom, Catherine showed me architectural plans. "We want to keep some original elements: the built-in bookshelves, the window seats, the garden views, places of peace within the healing." "She'd have loved this," I said, touching the worn wood of a window frame. "Knowing her home would shelter others." "It already is," Catherine said gently. You're the first person we're helping heal. Everything else follows from that." We stood in comfortable silence, watching snow fall on the garden. Somewhere my parents sat in separate cells, their empire of lies collapsed. Mark gave testimony to save himself. Sarah remained at large, but running out of places to hide. The family I'd known was destroyed. But in its place, something new was growing. A center for healing, a community of survivors, a life built on truth rather than deception. I'd lost the family I was born into, but found the family I chose: Dorothy, Catherine, Jennifer, and others who valued integrity over blood. "We break ground next month," Catherine said. "Will you speak at the ceremony?" What would I say? The truth. That family isn't obligation. That love isn't blindness. That sometimes the greatest act of courage is refusing to enable those who harm others, even if they share your name. "Especially if they share your name," I corrected. "Will you do it?" I looked around the empty house, seeing not what was lost, but what could be built. "Yes, I'll speak. Someone needs to say these things out loud." Because silence had enabled my parents for 20 years. Silence from family who suspected. Silence from victims too ashamed to speak. Silence from a community that preferred comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. My voice would break that silence, not for revenge, but for others trapped in similar webs of family dysfunction and financial abuse. If my story could help one person recognize the signs, find the courage to speak up, refuse to enable criminal behavior, then every painful revelation was worth it. "Thank you," Catherine said simply. "No," I replied, "thank you, for showing me that destruction can become construction, that victims can become victors, that the end of one story is just the beginning of another." As we locked up and headed to our cars, my phone buzzed. An email from Marcus, the forensic accountant. Subject line, "Full report complete." Inside documentation of every theft, every fraud, every identity crime. The total was staggering. Nearly 500,000 stolen from me alone over 14 years. But also a roadmap to recovery. Every dollar could be traced, claimed, returned. I forwarded it to the legal team with a simple note: pursue everything. Because that's what Dorothy had taught me. That's what grandmother would have wanted. That's what justice demanded. Complete and total accountability. No mercy for those who showed none. No protection for those who offered only exploitation. The reckoning wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. But for the first time in my life, I was in control of my own story. And I intended to write a better ending. The federal courthouse in Burlington had become as familiar as my own office over the past months. But this December morning felt different. The air crackled with anticipation as victims' reporters and curious onlookers packed the gallery for what promised to be explosive testimony. Sarah had been captured. After 2 months on the run, she'd been arrested at the Canadian border, trying to cross with fake identification. Now she sat in the defendant's chair, her designer clothes replaced with jail attire, her perfectly styled hair hanging limp. The pregnancy she'd faked was ironically real now, a visible bump that her lawyer would undoubtedly use for sympathy. But today wasn't about Sarah. Today my parents would testify against each other. The plea deals had come suddenly. Facing life sentences, both Thomas and Patricia had independently decided to cooperate. Each believed they could minimize their punishment by blaming the other. Neither knew their spouse had made the same calculation. The government calls Patricia Hamilton. The prosecutor announced. My mother entered in shackles, a federal marshal at each elbow. 3 months in custody had erased every trace of the society matron. She looked older, grayer, smaller, but her eyes still held that calculating gleam as she took the oath. Mrs. Hamilton, the prosecutor began, you've agreed to testify truthfully in exchange for consideration at sentencing. Yes. Can you describe how the fraudulent schemes began? Patricia straightened, finding her performance posture. It was all Thomas. He came home one day 20 years ago saying he'd found a way to make real money. Dorothy Chen had developed some technology and he saw an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? To redirect her patents to our benefit? I objected, of course. Dorothy was our friend, but Thomas insisted it was just business. From the gallery, Dorothy watched impassively. We all knew this was revisionist history, but Patricia sold it with conviction. I was a dutiful wife, Patricia continued. I supported my husband even when I had reservations. He said if I didn't help, he'd divorce me, and I'd get nothing. So you were coerced? Emotionally and financially. Thomas controlled everything. I was trapped. For 2 hours, Patricia painted herself as a victim. Every crime was Thomas's idea. Every document she'd signed was under duress. She even claimed he'd threatened violence if she didn't comply. What about the Eleanor Hamilton Memorial Fund? The prosecutor asked. The fake charity in your mother's name. Patricia's mask slipped for a moment. That was regrettable. But again, Thomas insisted. He said it would honor my mother's memory while helping our family. I was grieving vulnerable. He exploited that. You personally solicited donations from your mother's friends. Under my husband's direction, he wrote scripts for me to follow, monitored my calls. I had no choice. Then came the devastating part. Patricia producing evidence against Thomas. Secret recordings she'd made for protection. Financial documents showing his hidden accounts. Photos of him meeting with other criminals she claimed he'd partnered with. I lived in fear for 20 years. She concluded, tears flowing. But when he involved our daughters, I knew I had to speak up. A mother protects her children even from their father. The irony of her claiming to protect us while actively stealing from me wasn't lost on the gallery. Several victims actually laughed. Cross-examination destroyed her performance. Thomas's lawyer had her recordings analyzed. They were recent made after arrest to manufacture evidence. The hidden accounts she'd discovered included her signatures. The criminal meetings were legitimate business dinners she'd attended. Mrs. Hamilton, Thomas's lawyer said coldly, isn't it true you masterminded the Memorial Fund fraud entirely on your own? No, We have emails where you brag about the idea, where you call your husband too soft to properly exploit grief. He presented email after email, Patricia's words damning her thoroughly. By the time he finished, her victim narrative lay in shreds. No further questions. Then it was Thomas's turn. If Patricia had played the battered wife, Thomas went for the manipulated husband. He entered with a defeated shuffle projecting broken masculinity. Mr. Hamilton, tell us how the fraudulent activities began. Thomas sighed deeply. Patricia came from money, had expensive tastes. When my legitimate businesses struggled, she pushed me to find other sources of income. Pushed how? Emotional manipulation, threats of divorce. She'd say things like, real men provide for their families, and maybe I should have married Richard Chen instead. In the gallery, Richard Chen's widow made a disgusted sound. Even in testimony, Thomas couldn't resist a racist dig. The Dorothy Chen fraud, whose idea was that Patricia noticed Dorothy trusted us completely, said it would be easy to redirect some patents just enough to get us through tough times. I resisted, but Patricia said if I didn't do it, she'd leave and take the children. For 3 hours, Thomas painted Patricia as Lady Macbeth, ambitious, ruthless, pushing her weak husband into crime. He produced his own evidence recordings of Patricia planning schemes, documents in her handwriting, even a journal where she detailed manipulation tactics. This entry, Thomas pointed to a page. She wrote about practicing tears in the mirror, learning to cry on command for sympathy. The journal was damning. Patricia's own words describing victims as marks celebrating successful frauds, planning future crimes with cheerful enthusiasm. "What about your daughters?" the prosecutor asked. Thomas's face crumpled. "Patricia poisoned them against me, taught Sarah to see crime as normal business, used Rachel's trusting nature against her. I wanted to confess many times, but Patricia said she'd tell the girls I was abusive if I tried." "So you were trapped?" "Completely. Patricia controlled the household, the finances, the children. I was just her tool." Then Thomas dropped his biggest bombshell. "She wasn't even faithful. The whole time she was pushing me to crime, she was having an affair with David Sternberg, our lawyer." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Patricia shot to her feet. "Liar," she screamed. "You pathetic, worthless liar." "I have photos," Thomas said calmly. "Hotel receipts, love letters discussing how they'd frame me for everything and run away together." The judge gavelled for order as Patricia had to be restrained. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Through it all, Thomas sat with a small, satisfied smile. When order restored, the evidence was presented. Photos of Patricia and Sternberg in compromising positions, financial records showing money diverted to Sternberg beyond legal fees, letters discussing their plan to let Thomas take the fall. You see, Thomas concluded, I was the victim all along, of my wife, her lover, their schemes. I just wanted to be a good husband and father. Sarah watched it all with dead eyes, her parents destroying each other with surgical precision, each revelation worse than the last. When the lunch recess was called, she asked to speak. "Your Honor." Her lawyer said, "My client wishes to make a statement." Judge Harrison nodded. "Proceed." Sarah stood slowly, one hand on her pregnant belly. "I've watched my parents blame each other all morning, heard them claim victimhood while admitting to destroying lives. So let me add my truth to the record." She turned to face the gallery, finding my eyes. "They're both lying. Every word. They planned everything together, celebrated their crimes together, taught me that honest people were suckers, and family was just another word for accomplice." "Ms. Hamilton," her lawyer warned, "perhaps we should discuss." "No, I'm done with lawyers and lies and schemes." She faced the judge. "I'm guilty of fraud, of theft, of conspiracy. I learned from the best. My loving parents who are now eating each other alive to save themselves." She turned to Thomas and Patricia. "You want to know the truth? You're both monsters. You destroyed Dorothy Chen for money. You stole from grandmother while she was dying. You used Rachel's trust fund as your personal piggy bank. And you did it all together, laughing at your victims over family dinners." "Shut up!" Patricia shrieked. "You ungrateful brat." "Ungrateful," Sarah laughed bitterly. "For what? Teaching me crime, showing me how to fake pregnancy for sympathy. Oh, wait, joke's on me. Now I'm actually pregnant and facing federal prison because I followed your stellar example." "You were always weak," Thomas spat. "Just like your sister. No spine for real business." "Real business," Sarah's voice rose. "You mean fraud, theft, destroying everyone who trusted you. If that's strength, I'm proud to be weak." The judge gavelled repeatedly. "Order, Ms. Hamilton, please continue through proper channels." But Sarah wasn't done. "You know what the best part is? You could have stopped. Any time in 20 years, you could have chosen honesty. But you loved the game too much, loved feeling superior to your marks. Well, congratulations. You played yourselves. She sat down heavily, tears streaming. I plead guilty to all charges. No deals, no negotiations. I did what I did and I'll pay for it. At least I'll sleep with a clean conscience. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Then from the gallery, slow clapping. Dorothy Chen applauding Sarah's honesty. Others joined until the judge gavelled for quiet. Ms. Hamilton. Judge Harrison said carefully, "You understand pleading guilty without a deal could mean significant prison time." "I understand, but I won't be like them." She gestured at her parents. "Blaming everyone else, playing victim, destroying each other for a few years off a sentence. I'd rather serve 20 years honestly than 5 as a liar." After court adjourned, I found myself in the hallway with Dorothy. We watched as marshals led my family away in different directions. Parents to separate facilities, Sarah to psychiatric evaluation given her pregnancy. "Your sister surprised me," Dorothy said. "Perhaps there's hope for her." "She's still going to prison." "Yes, but she'll leave it with integrity intact. That's more than your parents will have." Mark's lawyer approached us. "Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Thompson would like a word if you're willing." I found Mark in a holding room looking exhausted. "I wanted to apologize," he said without preamble, "for my part in everything, for not speaking up sooner, for letting greed override conscience." "Why tell me?" "Because you're the only Hamilton who chose truth over family." He laughed bitterly. "Your parents are destroying each other in there. Sarah just torpedoed her own defense, but you stood up from the beginning. That takes courage I didn't have. It took me 32 years to find it." "Better late than never." He paused. "I'm testifying tomorrow. Everything I know, every crime I witnessed. Your parents won't have anyone left to blame but themselves." That evening, I sat in my apartment watching news coverage of the day's events. Family fraud trial explodes as parents turn on each other. Read the headlines. Video of Patricia being dragged from court screaming. Thomas's satisfied smirk. Sarah's unexpected confession. My phone rang. Louise. "I watched online," she said quietly. "It was horrible. Seeing them tear each other apart like that. They were always capable of it. We just refused to see." "Patricia called me from jail, begging for character witnesses. Said Thomas forced her into everything." "Will you testify?" A long pause. "No, I'm done enabling her. Whatever she did, she chose. Just like I chose to stay silent too long." After we hung up, I sat in darkness thinking about choices. My parents chose crime. Sarah chose to follow their example until forced to face consequences. Mark chose self-preservation. The family chose willful blindness. And I chose truth even when it meant standing alone. Tomorrow would bring more testimony, more revelations, more family destruction, but also more clarity. Each word spoken in court was another bar in the cages they'd built themselves. Each lie exposed was another step toward justice. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "Groundbreaking ceremony scheduled for next month. Your grandmother's house will become something beautiful. From destruction comes construction." I smiled the first genuine smile in days. Yes, from destruction comes construction. My family was destroying itself in federal court, but from those ashes, something better would rise. A retreat for victims, a scholarship fund, a chance for others to break free from toxic family cycles. The Hamilton name, so long associated with fraud, would come to mean something else. Hope, healing, the courage to choose truth over blood. That was my grandmother's true legacy, not the house, but the strength to stand against those who would corrupt it. Tomorrow, Mark would testify. Next week, sentencing. Next month, ground would break on the retreat center. The family I'd known was ending in spectacular fashion, but perhaps that's how all toxic systems die. Not quietly, but in explosive revelations as each member scrambles to save themselves. I raised a glass of wine to the empty room. "To endings," I said aloud, "and to better beginnings." Because tomorrow would come, and with it more truth, more justice, more freedom from the family that had nearly destroyed me. The meltdown was complete. Now came the rebuilding. The call came at 6 in the morning, 2 days after my family's courtroom implosion. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Rachel, this is Eleanor Hartley from the country club. I need to speak with you about your parents. Eleanor Hartley, my parents' former bridge partner pillar of Connecticut society and someone who'd cut them off completely after their arrest. Mrs. Hartley, please just Eleanor now. Can we meet? I have information that might help the victims recover assets. An hour later, I sat across from her at a discreet Boston cafe. Eleanor looked exactly as I remembered, Pearl's perfect posture radiating old money elegance. But her usual reserve had cracked, replaced by something like determination. I've been a coward, she began without preamble. Your parents defrauded us of $200,000. Richard and I suspected for years but said nothing. Country club politics, you understand. But watching you stand up to them... She slid a folder across the table. Bank records, emails, documentation of a phantom investment in Hartley Hamilton Ventures. We weren't going to come forward. The embarrassment, the scandal. But then Richard had a heart attack last month. Mild, he's recovering. But it clarified things. Pride means nothing if you enable evil through silence. You're willing to testify. Already scheduled with the prosecutor. But there's more. She leaned forward. Your parents weren't working alone. There's a network. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. What kind of network? Connecticut's elite has its share of predators. Your parents were part of an informal group that shared targets, tactics, alibis. We called them the Tuesday Club because they met weekly at the golf course. She produced photos. My parents with 6 other couples, all prominent families, all smiling over cocktails while apparently plotting their next victims. The Weatherbys run medical fraud. The Prescotts specialize in art forgeries. The Montgomerys do Ponzi schemes. They helped each other, covered for each other, legitimized each other. How many victims? Hundreds, maybe thousands. They've been operating for 15 years using social connections to identify marks with money and trusting natures. I stared at the photos, recognizing faces from charity galas and society pages. Why didn't anyone report this? Who reports their friends, their golf partners, the people whose children marry yours? Eleanor's voice turned bitter. We all knew something was off, but convinced ourselves we were imagining things, easier than accepting that our entire social circle was criminal. What changed? You did. Watching Thomas and Patricia's children turn against them, seeing consequences actually happen, it gave others courage. I've been contacted by a dozen families ready to speak up. She gave me a list, names I recognized, people my parents had bragged about knowing. All victims, all silent until now. There's going to be a meeting, Eleanor said. Tonight, victims gathering to share evidence, coordinate testimony. Will you come? Where? Richard's conference room. He's a retired federal judge. Says it's time to use his connections for good instead of cocktail party bragging rights. That evening, I entered a mahogany-paneled conference room to find 40 people assembled. Some I recognized from the trial gallery. Others were new faces, all wearing expressions of mingled shame and determination. Judge Richard Hartley commanded the room despite his recent heart attack. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here because we failed to speak up, failed to protect others, failed to see what was happening in our own community. But failure can be corrected. One by one, people shared their stories. The Weatherbys had sold fake cancer treatments to desperate families. The Prescotts had convinced elderly collectors their real art was fake, buying it cheap and selling high. Each revelation painted a picture of systematic predation disguised as high society. I lost my daughter's college fund to the Montgomerys, one woman said quietly, but I was too embarrassed to report it. What would people think? The Hamiltons got us for $300,000, an elderly man added. Promised returns on a shopping center development. We saw the plans met the architects. All fake, but so convincing. Dorothy had been invited and sat beside me listening intently. "This is bigger than individual prosecutions," she said finally. "This is organized crime in country club clothing. We need federal RICO investigations." "I can help with that," Judge Hartley said. "I still have contacts at the Justice Department, but we need comprehensive evidence." "I've been documenting everything," a voice said from the back. We turned to see David Sternberg's assistant, Monica. "I've worked for him for 10 years, saw every scheme, every forged document, every crime. I have copies of everything." The room erupted. Sternberg was the Tuesday Club's legal facilitator, the one who made their frauds look legitimate. His files would be a roadmap to every crime. "Why come forward now?" someone asked. Monica's face hardened. "Because he's trying to pin everything on his assistant. Says I was the mastermind while he was an innocent dupe. 20 years of loyalty and he throws me under the bus. No, I'll bury him with truth." We divided into working groups. Financial forensics experts volunteered to trace money. Retired law enforcement offered to coordinate with agencies. Victims with evidence began organizing files. "This is what my mother wanted," I said to Dorothy during a break. "Not the criminal enterprise, the community response, people coming together to make things right." "Your grandmother would be proud," Dorothy agreed. "You've catalyzed something important." Over the following days, the network unraveled rapidly. Monica's files were a prosecutor's dream, detailed records of every fraud, every player, every victim. The Tuesday Club had been methodical in their crimes, but fatal in their documentation. Arrests came in waves: the Weatherbys at their Hamptons estate, the Prescotts during a gallery opening, the Montgomerys trying to flee to Switzerland. Each arrest made headlines exposing the rot beneath Connecticut's golden surface. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting statements, victims seeking advice, lawyers offering representation. But the call that mattered came from Sarah. "I heard about the Tuesday Club," she said, from federal custody. "Mom and Dad were always so proud of those connections. They're all going down, the whole network." "Good." A pause. "Rachel, I've been thinking, in therapy here, about cycles and choices and what we pass on." "What do you mean?" "This baby. I don't want her born into our family's legacy. I want to give her up for adoption. To a real family, one that knows love without manipulation." My throat tightened. That's incredibly brave. Is it, or is it just recognizing I'm not fit to raise a child? I learned parenting from criminals. What could I possibly teach except how to lie and steal? "You could teach her to choose differently, to break cycles, by giving her to someone who already has. There's a couple here, volunteers at the prison ministry, former addicts who rebuilt their lives. They want to adopt. They understand redemption." "Have you decided?" "Yes, my daughter deserves better than a Hamilton legacy. She deserves love without conditions, trust without betrayal, family without fraud." After we hung up, I sat processing Sarah's choice. She was right. Our family legacy was poison. But maybe that's why people like us needed to work harder to create something better. That night, I attended another victim meeting. The group had grown to over 100, with more joining online. Judge Hartley had connected us with a federal task force specifically targeting white-collar crime networks. "The Tuesday Club wasn't unique," the lead investigator explained. "We're finding similar groups nationwide, wealthy predators using social connections to identify and exploit victims. Your courage in speaking up is helping us map these networks." Eleanor Hartley stood. "I propose we form a permanent organization, supporting victims, educating communities, preventing future predation. Turn our shame into action." "The Phoenix Foundation," someone suggested, "rising from the ashes of our losses." Dorothy smiled. "I'll provide initial funding. My success came from rebuilding after fraud. Let's help others do the same." Within an hour, we'd outlined a structure: legal aid, financial counseling, emotional support, educational programs, everything victims needed to recover and rebuild. "Rachel," Judge Hartley said, "we'd like you on the board. Your voice has been crucial in breaking the silence." "I'm not a victim," I protested. Not like the rest of you. You're a survivor, Eleanor corrected. And you showed us how to stop being victims. That's exactly what we need. As the meeting ended, people approached me with thanks, stories, hope. Former marks becoming activists. A shamed silence transforming into purposeful action. The Tuesday Club had created a network of victims, but we were building something stronger. A network of survivors. Driving home, I thought about unexpected allies. Eleanor Hartley, who I dismissed as a society snob. Monica, the overlooked assistant who documented everything. Judge Hartley using his privilege for justice. Even Sarah choosing to break our toxic cycle through painful sacrifice. My phone buzzed. Catherine Chen saw the news about the Tuesday Club arrests. Your family's crimes keep exposing others. It's like dominoes falling. Good dominoes, I texted back. Each arrest reveals more truth. Your grandmother's house will host the Phoenix Foundation's first retreat. Victims of the Tuesday Club learning to rebuild. Full circle. Full circle indeed. The house my parents tried to steal would shelter their victims. The network they'd used for crime would be replaced by one fostering healing. The silence that protected predators would become voices demanding justice. That night, I dreamed of grandmother. She stood in her garden smiling as flowers bloomed around her. You planted seeds of truth, she said. Now watch the garden grow. I woke with tears on my face but hope in my heart. The Tuesday Club was finished. The Phoenix Foundation was beginning. And I was learning that sometimes the most unexpected allies are those who've shared your struggle. My family had taught me that trust was weakness, love was leverage, and loyalty meant enabling crime. But these new allies were teaching different lessons. That shared pain could become collective strength. That speaking truth created space for others to follow. That real loyalty meant holding each other accountable, not covering up sins. The Hamiltons had fallen, but from their ashes something better was rising. Not just for me, but for every victim finding their voice, every survivor choosing truth, every unexpected ally joining the fight. The network of predators was crumbling. In its place, a network of phoenixes was taking flight. The federal building's mediation room felt different from the courtrooms I'd grown accustomed to. Smaller, more intimate, with a round table that forced all parties to face each other. February rain streaked the windows as lawyers arranged documents for what promised to be the final financial reckoning of my parents' crimes. Dorothy sat across from me, composed as always, but with a satisfaction in her eyes that 20 years of waiting had earned. Beside her, 3 thick binders contained the forensic accounting of every penny stolen, every innovation pilfered, every opportunity destroyed. The government has seized approximately $32 million in assets, the federal mediator began. This includes real estate investments, offshore accounts, and liquidated personal property. Today we determine distribution to victims. $32 million. I still struggled to comprehend how my parents had stolen so much while constantly claiming poverty, always needing more. Primary claimants have been verified, the mediator continued. Ms. Chen's losses adjusted for inflation and lost opportunities total $48 million. The estate cannot cover full restitution, but she has priority claim. I don't want their money, Dorothy said quietly. I want justice. Every penny recovered goes to victims. The room stirred. Lawyers exchanged glances. Even the mediator looked surprised. Ms. Chen, you're entitled to... I'm worth $200 million now. Money I earned honestly building from nothing after they destroyed me. Taking their assets would feel like profiting from association with them. I won't be tainted by their crimes even in restitution. She looked directly at me. Besides, their daughter has suffered enough. Let the assets help all victims equally. That's unprecedented, the mediator managed. So were their crimes. I propose establishing a victim compensation fund, equal distribution based on percentage of loss, with priority for elderly victims who can't rebuild. Over the next hours, we structured the settlement. The Phoenix Foundation would administer funds ensuring every verified victim received proportional compensation. My own claims, the identity theft, the stolen trust funds, the attempted house theft, would be treated equally with others. There's also the matter of ongoing royalties, Dorothy's lawyer noted. Several patents stolen from Ms. Chen continue generating income. Those rights revert to her, which I'm assigning to fund the retreat center indefinitely, Dorothy announced. Rachel's grandmother's house will never want for funding. My throat tightened. Why are you doing this? Because your grandmother tried to warn me. Because you chose truth over family. Because revenge would make me like them, and I've spent 20 years ensuring I'm nothing like them. The mediator documented each decision. As we worked, I received a text from Marcus, my forensic accountant. Final tally on your personal losses, $847,000. Full documentation filed. $800,000 stolen by my own parents through identity theft and fraud. Yet watching Dorothy forfeit millions for principal, I felt my own perspective shift. I want to match Dorothy's gesture, I heard myself say. Any funds I receive go to the Phoenix Foundation Scholarship Program for children of fraud victims pursuing education. Rachel, Dorothy said softly, you don't have to. Yes, I do. That money was stolen twice. From victims to my parents, from my parents to me. It's poisoned. Let it become something clean. By afternoon, we'd structured a comprehensive settlement. Every victim would receive something. Not full restitution, the money simply didn't exist, but enough to matter. Elderly victims who'd lost retirement savings would be made substantially whole. Small business owners could restart. Families could begin recovering. The Tuesday Club assets are still being calculated, the mediator noted. As their crimes are interconnected with the Hamiltons' additional funds may become available. Same distribution model, Dorothy said firmly. No victim left behind. As we prepared to sign final documents, Patricia's lawyer burst in. My client objects to this distribution. She claims marital assets are being improperly seized. Your client is serving 25 years for fraud, the mediator said coldly. She has no standing to object. She's filing for divorce and demanding her share of legitimate assets. I actually laughed. What legitimate assets? Everything they owned was bought with stolen money. Mrs. Hamilton claims gifts from her mother represent clean funds. My grandmother's gifts. I stood, anger flashing. The grandmother they stole from while she was dying, those gifts. Dorothy placed a calming hand on my arm. Let her file. Discovery will be educational. We have Eleanor Hamilton's complete financial records. Every gift can be traced to fraud proceeds Patricia laundered through her mother's accounts. The lawyer retreated deflated, but the interruption had reminded me of unfinished business. The house in Connecticut, I said. What happens to it? Scheduled for auction. Proceeds to the victim fund. I want to buy it. Everyone stared. Dorothy looked particularly surprised. Rachel, why would you want that house? Because it represents everything they valued over people. Because it's where they planned their crimes. Because I want to donate it to the Phoenix Foundation as transitional housing for fraud victims. Let something stolen become shelter for those who've lost homes to crime. The irony is rather perfect, Dorothy admitted. We agreed I'd bid at auction using my own legitimately earned savings. The house that showcased my parents' false success would become a haven for their victims. As documents were signed and notarized, a strange peace settled over the room. 20 years of crime being methodically unwound, transformed from greed to generosity. Implementation begins immediately, the mediator announced. First distributions within 30 days. The Phoenix Foundation will coordinate victim notification. We filed out into the rainy afternoon. In the lobby, Eleanor Hartley waited with other Tuesday Club victims. Well, she asked anxiously. Full distribution to all victims, I announced. Dorothy forfeited her claim to benefit everyone. The Phoenix Foundation will manage everything. Eleanor actually hugged Dorothy Pearls, clicking against buttons. You've shown more grace than any of us deserve." "Grace isn't deserved," Dorothy replied. "It's chosen. Your courage in speaking up matters more than my money." As victims gathered around Dorothy with thanks and tears, I slipped outside. The rain had stopped, leaving Boston gleaming under breaking clouds. My phone rang. Sarah from federal custody. "I heard about the settlement," she said without preamble. "You gave up your share." "It was never really mine." $800,000 is real money, Rachel. You could have kept it legally. Legally isn't the same as ethically. That money has blood on it. Silence. "Then the adoption is finalized. My daughter goes to her new family tomorrow." "How are you feeling?" "Empty, relieved, terrified, free." She laughed shakily. "Is it possible to feel all that at once?" "Yes, I feel it every day since choosing truth over family." "Rachel, I know I've said it before, but I'm sorry. For the fake pregnancy, the manipulation, the house, for being the daughter they raised instead of the sister you deserved." "You're becoming the sister I deserve now. That matters more. I'll have 20 years to become her. Maybe when I get out, we can have the relationship we should have had all along." "I'd like that." After we hung up, I stood watching the city move around me. Somewhere my parents sat in separate prisons, probably still blaming each other. The Tuesday Club faced their own reckonings. Victims were becoming survivors. Silence becoming testimony. Theft becoming charity. My phone buzzed. Catherine Chen sending photos from Vermont. "Construction is ahead of schedule. Your grandmother's house will be ready by spring." The images showed transformation, rooms that once held family secrets becoming counseling spaces, the study where I discovered evidence becoming a legal aid office, the kitchen where grandmother taught me love becoming a communal gathering space for healing. "It's perfect," I texted back. "Your speech at the opening is scheduled, breaking cycles when family loyalty enables crime. We're expecting a full house." A speech I never imagined giving at a center I never imagined existing, funded by crimes I never imagined discovering. Yet here we were, building something beautiful from wreckage. Dorothy found me in the plaza. "You did well today. I learned from the best. You showed me that victory isn't about taking everything. It's about transforming everything." "Your grandmother knew that. It's why she documented crimes instead of confronting them. She was building your case, not hers." We walked together through Boston's financial district, past buildings where legitimate business happened every day. My parents had mimicked these structures, creating elaborate facades of success. But facades always crumble. Truth always surfaces. Justice, as grandmother said, always finds its level. "The retreat center needs a director," Dorothy mentioned casually. "Someone who understands both sides, the betrayal and the rebuilding. Interested?" I stopped walking. "I have a career, a life here." "You have a job that no longer fulfills you and an apartment that echoes with ghosts. I've seen how you light up discussing the Phoenix Foundation. This is your calling, Rachel. Not corporate law, justice for the vulnerable." She was right. Every billable hour at my firm felt hollow compared to the work of exposing truth and enabling healing. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but know this. Your grandmother's house needs someone who loved it honestly, who better than the granddaughter who chose truth over theft." That night, I sat in my apartment reviewing settlement documents, millions flowing from criminal coffers to victim relief, names on every page, people whose trust my parents betrayed now receiving some measure of justice. My phone rang, Louise, my aunt. "The settlement news is everywhere," she said. "Patricia called me collect, screaming about Dorothy stealing her life." Dorothy refused the money that was rightfully hers. How is that stealing? In Patricia's mind, keeping her from assets is theft. She genuinely doesn't understand why crime has consequences. She'll have 25 years to figure it out. "Rachel, I'm proud of you for standing up, speaking out, choosing justice. You broke our family's cycle of enabling. That took courage I never had." After we hung up, I made my decision. I opened my laptop and began typing. Dear partners, I submit this letter of resignation effective in 30 days. I have been offered the opportunity to direct a retreat center for victims of financial fraud. The words flowed easily. This wasn't retreat or defeat. It was advancing toward purpose. My parents had shown me how greed corrupted everything it touched. Now I would show others how truth could heal what greed had broken. By midnight, I'd accepted Dorothy's offer, submitted my resignation, and begun planning my transition. The Hamilton name so long associated with fraud would become synonymous with recovery. The settlement was more than financial. It was a settling of accounts that went beyond money to meaning. My parents had built their lives on others' losses. Their legacy would be rebuilt lives, renewed trust, and the radical proposition that justice could transform into mercy. Tomorrow, distribution would begin. Checks would arrive for people who'd given up hope of recovery. But more than money would flow. Dignity restored faith, renewed the knowledge that someone had finally said, this was wrong and we're making it right. That was the true settlement, not just of accounts, but of the score between those who take and those who give, between those who destroy and those who build. Between the family I was given and the family I chose. The rain had returned, drumming against windows like applause. I raised a glass of wine to the night, to grandmother, to Dorothy, to every victim finding their voice. To settlements, I whispered, and to new foundations. Because tomorrow we would begin building on ground cleared of lies, cleaned by truth, and consecrated by the simple act of choosing justice over blood. Spring arrived early in Vermont that year, as if nature itself wanted to celebrate new beginnings. I stood in what had been grandmother's garden, now expanded into a meditation space for the retreat center. The April air smelled of fresh earth and possibility as contractors put finishing touches on the Eleanor Hamilton Center for Financial Recovery. The lotus pond was Catherine's idea, Dorothy said, joining me. Beauty rising from mud seemed appropriate. Workers installed the last of the therapeutic spaces, while victims turned volunteers, arranged furniture in the communal areas. In 6 weeks since I'd left corporate law, I'd thrown myself into creating something unprecedented, a healing space specifically for those devastated by financial betrayal. Ms. Hamilton. A young woman approached nervously. I'm Emma Martinez. I'm here for the counselor training. Emma's story had touched me during applications. Her elderly parents lost their retirement to one of the Tuesday Club schemes, leading to her father's fatal heart attack. Now she wanted to help others navigate similar trauma. Welcome, Emma. Let me show you around. As we toured, I explained our approach. Financial fraud isn't just about money. It shatters trust, destroys relationships, creates lasting trauma. We address all aspects: legal aid, financial counseling, psychological support, practical rebuilding. Like that, she pointed to a classroom where Mark Thompson, out on supervised release, taught a session on recognizing fraud tactics. Exactly like that. Who better to explain criminal manipulation than someone who participated in it? Mark had approached me about volunteering, desperate to make amends. After much consideration, Dorothy and I agreed. His insider knowledge could help victims understand they weren't stupid or naive. They were targeted by sophisticated predators. Rachel, Catherine called from the main house. Sarah's on video call. I excused myself and found Catherine in what had been Father's study, now our administrative center. On screen, Sarah sat in her prison's visiting room, visibly pregnant, but somehow lighter than I'd ever seen her. How are you feeling? I asked. Physically like a whale, emotionally clearer every day. She shifted uncomfortably. The therapy here is intense. Understanding how Mom and Dad programmed us to see crime as normal business. Any word from them? Dad writes weekly. Pages of justification and blame. I don't read them anymore. Mom. Sarah's face hardened. Mom sent a letter saying I'm dead to her, that I killed our family by confessing. Sarah, I'm sorry. Don't be. It's freeing, actually. Being dead to Patricia Hamilton means being alive to myself. She managed a smile. Tell me about the center. I want to picture something beautiful while I'm here." I gave her a virtual tour through my phone showing the transformation. Her eyes widened at each room reimagined for healing. "Grandmother would be so proud," she whispered. "You took their crime scene and made it sacred." "We all did, even you by telling the truth." 20 more years to go," she said quietly. "But my counselor says I can get correspondence degrees, maybe become a therapist myself, help other children of criminals process the mindfuck of growing up in those homes." After we disconnected, I sat in the quiet room processing my sister's transformation. Prison was breaking her down to build her up, something our parents' comfortable Connecticut life never could have done. "Ms. Hamilton." Mark stood in the doorway. "Class finished. Thought you should know. We had a breakthrough. Mrs. Chen from the Tuesday Club finally admitted she wasn't stupid for trusting your parents. First time she's shown herself any compassion." "Progress," I murmured. "Thank you, Mark." He shifted uncomfortably. "I know I can never make up for what I did, but if my experience helps one person avoid being victimized, then your debt begins to balance. Keep doing the work." As he left, Dorothy entered with a thick folder. "Final inspection reports. We're cleared to open next month." "May 15th, I confirmed, grandmother's birthday. "The press wants statements. Several documentary crews have requested access. The Phoenix Foundation's work is attracting national attention." "Let them come. The more light we shine on financial fraud, the harder it becomes for predators to operate in shadows." We spent the afternoon reviewing opening ceremony details. Victims would share testimonies. Survivors would offer hope. Even Judge Hartley would speak about complicity and redemption. "There's one more thing," Dorothy said carefully. "Your mother has been sending letters to Phoenix Foundation board members, claiming the center is built on lies that she's the real victim. From prison, she has allies. A few Tuesday Club members who've maintained innocence are amplifying her message. They're calling it a witch hunt, saying we're destroying innocent families over financial misunderstandings." I felt the familiar anger rise, then breathed it away. Let them. Every letter they send proves they've learned nothing. Meanwhile, we keep building. That evening, I walked alone through the house, remembering. Here grandmother had taught me honesty. There my parents had planned their crimes. Each room held dual histories: love and betrayal, trust and theft. My phone rang. Louise. "I wanted you to know," she said, "I've been accepted to the first retreat. After staying silent about Patricia's crimes, I need to process my own complicity." "Louise, you were victimized too." "I was both, victim and enabler. That's what your center addresses, isn't it? The complex reality that we're rarely purely innocent or guilty." "Yes, that's exactly what we address." "Good, because I'm not the only family member coming. 3 cousins, an aunt, 2 family friends. We all need to understand how we let it happen." After we hung up, I stood in grandmother's bedroom, now a quiet room for reflection. The window seat remained overlooking gardens, where healing would happen. On the wall hung her portrait, not the formal one from the Connecticut house, but a candid shot of her gardening dirt on her hands and joy on her face. "We did it," I whispered. "Turned their crime scene into your vision of grace." A knock interrupted. Emma Martinez stood nervously at the door. "Sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you for accepting my application despite my lack of formal counseling experience. Experience comes in many forms. You live this trauma. That matters more than degrees." My mother wants to attend the opening. She hasn't left the house since Dad died, but she says maybe it's time. Maybe seeing others who survived what we survived. She's welcome. Healing happens in community. Emma left with tears of gratitude. I remained thinking about the ripples of redemption. My parents' crimes had devastated hundreds. But from that devastation, thousands might find healing. The mathematics of justice weren't simple. One act of evil creating multiple acts of good. My phone buzzed, a news alert: Tuesday Club trials begin, largest white-collar crime network in state history. The investigations Dorothy and I had sparked were bearing fruit. Every Tuesday club member faced charges. Their interconnected crimes created a RICO case that would dismantle high society fraud rings nationwide. But I was done with courtrooms. My work now was here in grandmother's house, creating what my parents had tried to destroy, a place of truth and trust. Catherine appeared with tea, ready for tomorrow's training session. 12 counselors, 8 financial advisors, 6 attorneys, all volunteering their time. Plus support staff, security, maintenance, a full team dedicated to healing. She smiled. Your grandmother would say we've planted good seeds. Now we tend the garden. We sat in comfortable silence, planning final details. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Next month, survivors would arrive seeking what we all sought, a way forward from betrayal. But tonight in the house my parents had tried to steal, surrounded by people choosing redemption over revenge, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the peace of ignorance I'd lived in before discovering their crimes, not the peace of exhaustion after battles in court, but the deep peace that comes from aligned purpose, from building rather than tearing down, from choosing creation over destruction. My phone lit with a text from Sarah. Saw the news coverage of the center. You look happy, real happy, not Hamilton happy. Hold on to that. I would, because this wasn't Hamilton happiness, the false joy of successful schemes and stolen comfort. This was real, built on truth, sustained by service, confirmed by the knowledge that grandmother's house would shelter those my family had broken. Tomorrow would come with its challenges. The center would open to its first residents. Stories of pain would fill these rooms, but so would stories of survival, resilience, redemption. And in telling those stories and creating space for truth and healing, we would all discover what my grandmother always knew, that love multiplied while greed divided, that truth healed while lies wounded, that the only real wealth was what we gave away. The Hamilton name would be redeemed not through denial or reputation management, but through the slow daily work of making right what had been wronged. One survivor at a time, one story at a time, one truth at a time. May 15th dawned crystal clear, one of those perfect Vermont mornings that made you believe in fresh starts. I stood on the porch of the Eleanor Hamilton Center, watching cars fill the parking area we'd carved from grandmother's old hayfield. Today, on what would have been her 92nd birthday, her house would officially become a beacon of hope. 3 news crews, 2 documentary teams, and over 200 registered guests. Catherine reported, clipboard in hand. Ready. As ready as anyone can be to publicly discuss their criminal family, I said, smoothing my dress. I'd chosen blue, grandmother's favorite color. The garden overflowed with people, survivors who'd found strength through the Phoenix Foundation, volunteers who donated countless hours, financial professionals offering pro bono services, even some Tuesday Club victims ready to begin their healing journey. Dorothy took the podium first, elegant in silver gray. 20 years ago, I lost everything to sophisticated criminals who happened to be someone's parents, someone's spouse, someone's grandparents. I rebuilt alone in silence, believing justice would never come. I was wrong. She spoke of patience, of resilience, of the moment she learned Thomas and Patricia Hamilton had been arrested. But this isn't about punishment. It's about transformation. Their daughter chose truth over blood, integrity over inheritance. She proved that we aren't doomed to repeat familial patterns. When my turn came, I faced the crowd with steady hands but racing heart. Among familiar faces, I spotted unexpected ones. Louise in the 3rd row, several cousins who'd been silent during the trials, even Mrs. Morrison, my 3rd grade teacher, who'd always said I was nothing like my parents. My name is Rachel Hamilton, I began. Daughter of convicted felons, granddaughter of Eleanor Hamilton, who loved honestly in a house built on lies. Today we reclaim that house for truth. I told our story completely. The golden childhood funded by theft, the slow realization of family corruption, the choice between enabling and exposing, the cost of choosing justice. People ask if I regret testifying against my parents. I regret that it was necessary. I regret their victims suffered for decades. I regret my silence before finding courage, but I don't regret choosing truth. I paused finding Sarah's counselor in the crowd. She was recording this for Sarah to watch from prison. My sister sends her love and support from federal custody. She wanted me to read something. I unfolded Sarah's letter. I won't be free for 20 years, but I'm freer in prison than I ever was in our family home. Because I finally admitted the truth. We were raised by criminals who taught us crime was clever business. To everyone listening who grew up in similar homes, it's not your fault. But once you know better, silence becomes complicity. Choose truth. Choose healing. Choose to break the cycle. Applause rippled through the garden. Sarah, the golden child who'd lost everything, had found her voice. This center, I continued, offers what my family stole: trust, dignity, and the resources to rebuild. We provide trauma counseling, legal aid, financial guidance, and community support. But most importantly, we provide validation that financial fraud is real violence with lasting wounds. I introduced our team: Mark Thompson teaching fraud recognition, Emma Martinez leading support groups, Judge Hartley coordinating legal services, each person a testament to redemption's possibility. My grandmother left me this house hoping I'd see through family lies to deeper truths. It took 32 years, but I finally have. The truth is, family isn't blood, it's choice. We choose who deserves our loyalty. We choose whose values to embrace. We choose whether to enable or expose wrongdoing. I looked directly at Louise and my cousins. To my blood relatives here today, seeking healing from our family's crimes, welcome. Your courage in acknowledging truth honors grandmother's memory more than silence ever could. The speech concluded with practical information about services, support groups, and resources. As I left the podium, the crowd rose in standing ovation. Not for me, but for the principle that truth trumped blood, that healing was possible, that cycles could be broken. The rest of the day blurred with activities: tours of the facilities, testimonials from Phoenix Foundation recipients, workshops on recognizing fraud, rebuilding credit processing, betrayal. The house hummed with purposeful energy. I found a quiet moment in grandmother's former study, now a library of resources for survivors. Through the window, I watched people connecting in the garden, sharing stories, finding community. "Proud of you, kid," a gruff voice said. I turned to find Sheriff Thompson, the officer who'd arrested my father. He looked uncomfortable in civilian clothes. "Sheriff, what brings you here?" "Retirement partially, but also—" He shifted awkwardly. "My brother got taken by a Tuesday club scheme, lost his hardware store, had a breakdown. Been too proud to seek help until he saw your news coverage. You speaking out gave him permission to admit he needed support." "Is he here?" "In the financial counseling workshop. First time he's smiled in 2 years hearing he's not alone." Thompson cleared his throat. "Your grandmother would be real proud. You took a crime scene and made it holy ground." As evening approached, the formal program ended, but people lingered. Support groups formed spontaneously. Contact information was exchanged. The healing community we'd envisioned was manifesting organically. Dorothy found me on the porch as sunset painted the mountains gold. "Successful launch," she said simply. "Beginning of a long journey. All journeys begin with single steps." She handed me an envelope. "This came for you. Correction facility return address." My mother's handwriting. I'd received dozens of her letters, all variations on the same themes: betrayal, manipulation, denial. I usually threw them away unopened, but something made me read this one. "Rachel, I watched news coverage of your opening ceremony from the prison library. You stand there in my mother's house, surrounded by our supposed victims, painting us as monsters. Do you feel righteous? Do you feel superior? You were nothing before us. We gave you everything. Education opportunities, connections. Now you bite the hand that fed you, aligning with that Chinese woman who destroyed our business. But I know something you don't. Your perfect Dorothy Chen isn't innocent. She stole our ideas first. We simply took back what was ours. Someday the truth will surface and you'll realize you chose the wrong side. Until then, know this. You're no longer my daughter. My mother would be ashamed of what you've become. Using her house for this charade proves you never understood family loyalty. Patricia Hamilton, my name, regardless of what federal inmates call me. I folded the letter carefully and handed it to Dorothy. She read it with no change in expression. Still playing the victim, she observed. Still convinced she's justified. Prison hasn't taught her anything. Did you steal their ideas first? I asked directly. Dorothy smiled. Your parents had no ideas to steal. They had connections, charm, and endless greed. I had innovation, work ethic, and naive trust. They took everything worth taking. I rebuilt with wisdom earned through loss. She'll never accept responsibility. No, but Sarah has. You have. Mark is trying. Louise is learning. That's how cycles break, one person at a time choosing accountability. We watched the last guests leave taillights disappearing into gathering dusk. The center would officially open to residents next week. 12 women, all survivors of financial fraud, would begin intensive healing programs. My phone rang, Sarah calling from prison. I watched the whole thing, she said, voice thick with emotion. You were perfect. Grandmother would be crying happy tears. How are you feeling? Proud. Sad I can't be there. Grateful you're doing this. A pause. My daughter's adoptive parents sent photos. She's beautiful, Rachel. Healthy, loved, surrounded by people who'll never teach her that crime is clever. Any regrets? Only that it took federal prison to break me free from their programming. But my counselor says that's common with cult survivors. It takes complete separation to see the dysfunction. Cult. What else would you call it? Charismatic leaders demanding total loyalty, rejecting outside values, punishing dissent. We weren't a family. We were a criminal organization with birth certificates. After we hung up, I made a final walk through the house. Each room held ghosts, but they felt peaceful now. In the kitchen, where grandmother taught me love through food, tomorrow's cooking class would help survivors nourish themselves. In the living room, where my parents planned crime support groups would plan recovery. The last car to leave surprised me. Louise emerged, approaching hesitantly. I needed to say something privately, she began. I failed you. Failed Eleanor. Failed every victim by staying silent. I told myself it wasn't my business, wasn't my place, but silence enabled them. You're here now. That matters. Does it, or am I just another Hamilton seeking absolution after the fact? You're someone choosing growth over comfort. That's all any of us can do. Choose better, once we know better. Louise hugged me, tears flowing. Your mother's wrong. Eleanor would be so proud. You honored her true legacy, not the house, but the values. Truth, service, love without manipulation. After she left, I stood alone in the garden as stars emerged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, residents arriving with trauma, programs to refine, funding to secure, the daily work of transforming pain into purpose. But tonight I felt the satisfaction of promises kept, to grandmother who'd trusted me with her home, to Dorothy who'd shown me that revenge wasn't the only response to betrayal, to every victim who'd been told their financial assault wasn't real violence. My phone buzzed with a final text from an unknown number. Ms. Hamilton, this is Thomas Barnes, your father's former cellmate. He asked me to tell you he's proud of what you've built, even if he can't say it himself. He's starting to understand what he lost by choosing crime over family. Maybe there's hope for him yet. Don't give up on people's ability to change. Sometimes it just takes losing everything to see what really mattered. I stared at the message, feeling something shift. Not forgiveness. That would take more time and genuine accountability from him. But perhaps the beginning of possibility. If Sarah could transform in prison, if Mark could teach against fraud, if Louise could acknowledge complicity, then maybe— No. I wouldn't hope for my parents' redemption, but I wouldn't close the door either. The center would remain open to all who genuinely sought healing, even those who'd caused the harm. Because that was grandmother's greatest lesson, that love wasn't endorsement, that boundaries weren't hatred, that you could reject someone's actions while leaving space for their potential transformation. The porch light attracted early season moths, circling endlessly toward illumination, like all of us perhaps, drawn to light, sometimes burning ourselves, but unable to resist the pull towards something brighter than darkness. I turned off the lights and locked the door. Tomorrow the real work began. Tonight I'd accomplished what seemed impossible years ago. I'd reclaimed our family home for love instead of lies, service instead of schemes, truth instead of theft. The Eleanor Hamilton Center for Financial Recovery was officially open, and with it hundreds of paths to healing that my parents' greed had tried to close forever. But greed, I'd learned, was ultimately weaker than grace. Lies crumbled while truth endured, and sometimes the most profound revenge was refusing to perpetuate cycles of harm, choosing instead to build something beautiful from the wreckage. As I drove away, I saw the house in my rearview mirror, solid and welcoming against the night sky. No longer a crime scene, but a catalyst for recovery. No longer my grandmother's house or my parents' target, but a community's resource for rebuilding after betrayal. I smiled, thinking of grandmother's favorite saying, "Plant good seeds, tend them faithfully, and trust the harvest." The seeds were planted, the tending had begun, and judging by today's turnout, the harvest would be abundant, beyond imagining. If you've experienced financial betrayal by family or friends, know that your pain is real and healing is possible. Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might help someone else break their silence. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of triumph over family dysfunction, and share with anyone who needs to hear that choosing truth over toxic loyalty is the beginning of freedom, not its end. Thank you for joining Rachel's journey. Remember, family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up with integrity, accountability, and genuine love. Until next time, may you find the courage to choose truth over comfort healing, over hiding and authentic connection, over obligatory loyalty.